Chapter 347. Leaving the Holy Land, Jian left the first cavern and visited the other 7 caverns. Each one contained its own saint-tier battle skill. Without any exceptions, each battle skill was illustrated on paintings that required the cultivator to comprehend it by themselves with no instructions. A saint-tier battle skill was not like a heaven-tier battle skill. Heaven-tier battle skills were written using words and required only a strong amount of practice in order to grasp the fundamentals. They also required time to initialize. A saint-tier battle skill was completely different. This required one's own ability to understand. So if one was unable to comprehend the saint-tier battle skill in their hand, it would be useless. A saint-tier battle skill was complicated and mysterious. A single saint-tier battle skill could have hundreds of paintings, and each form depicted on them could hold many different mysteries. Some only had 3 paintings, but each one held mysteries that could shatter the heavens and annihilate the earth. When looking at the pictures, the people drawn within the paintings seemed almost as if they were alive. Each one carried a world-shaking power. If one didn't have a certain base level of strength, they would not be able to endure this incorporeal presence. Even Jian had felt an indescribable amount of power coming from the paintings, causing him to spit out blood. Even just the grace of the paintings was enough to inflict damage on Jian. After such an event, Jian had a stronger understanding of saint-tier battle skills. He knew what realm he was currently in, and that this saint-tier battle skill was beyond his level. If he were to never become a saint ruler, nor grasp the profound mysteries of the world, then the time he had spent trying to understand the saint-tier battle skills would all be for naught. Leaving the 3rd area, Jian arrived at the 4th. The 4th area was simply a large study room with a table and chairs. Bookshelves could be seen everywhere with books filling up each shelf, bound with the animal leather of magical beasts. There was a strange energy that filled the area, attempting to prevent the books from corroding with time. These books were filled with insights from the previous generations of cultivators. While Jian wouldn't be able to benefit much from them now, he could still memorize them. Then he would be able to think back to them when his own comprehension was better. In the blink of an eye, Jian had spent 3 months within the 4th area. Jian had spent the entire time reading the insights from every single area possible within the realm of cultivation. While it was of no use to him now, they would come in handy later. During the days within the 4th area, Jian had also tried to establish his foundation even more. The experiences within the books he had read were many, and the amount of insights he could still glean from them were plenty. Those under the Heaven Saint Master realm would absorb the vital energy of the world to increase both their saint weapon and personal strength. But there was a barrier from the Great Saint Master to Earth Saint Master realm. If one succeeded in crossing the barrier, then they would become like the dragon. But if they failed, they would degenerate to a cripple who couldn't cultivate. Cultivating as an Earth Saint Master was an extremely simple task with no complications. As long as one reached the 6th cycle Earth Saint Master level, one could make the breakthrough to become a Heaven Saint Master by the usage of the world's vital energy. With a small step, they would become a Heaven Saint Master. Heaven Saint Masters were able to fly through the air with the use of their inner saint force to levitate. With the world's energy, they could fly through the air without much of a drain to themselves. So if one wanted to be a Heaven Saint Master, it was necessary to have a grasp on the vital energy of the world. The last part he grasped was the threshold to become a saint ruler. Although making the breakthrough to become a saint ruler wasn't as perilous as becoming an Earth Saint Master, the chances of making the breakthrough were many times harder. That was because if one wanted to make the breakthrough to become a saint ruler, they must have a fundamental grasp of the profound mysteries in the world. There were many secrets hidden within these profound mysteries, and they were the reason why there were so few saint rulers among the Tianyuan continent. This layer of cultivation was far away from the level Jian was currently at. Leaving the 4th area, Jian still had another month left in the Holy Land. During this final month, he had planned on going back to the 1st area to continue his cultivation for what would be equivalent to 10 months of actual time. Arriving at the 1st area, the heavenly enchantress was still sitting in her original spot, without any signs of moving. Sitting 10 meters away from her so as to not disturb her, Jianchen sat down with 2 Class 5 monster cores. Although the energy within this area was quite rich, the energy within a Class 5 monster core was denser. Now that he was a peak 3rd cycle Earth Saint Master, he was only a small hop away from the 4th cycle. The energy within the Holy Land is different from the outside world. The energy in here contains fragments of the profound mysteries of the world. Although they are minuscule, they should still provide a large amount of help to you. Just as Jianchen had taken out his Class 5 monster cores, the Heavenly Enchantress' heavenly voice could be heard once more. Pausing in shock, Jianchen didn't think that the Holy Land's energy would contain the mysteries of the world. Cupping his hands to signify his thanks to the Heavenly Enchantress, he put the Class 5 monster cores back into his space belt and began to cultivate once more with the energy from the Holy Land. Suddenly, the first area's energy began to rush toward Jianchen in a frantic craze, while Jianchen continued to accept all of it into his body, like water into a whale. At the current pace, his absorption rate was no slower than the Heavenly Enchantress. With the help of the sword spirits, Jianchen was able to absorb both the world chi and the energy within the monster core at a rate several times faster than anyone else. Ever since he'd first awakened the sword spirits in Huang Village, they had stopped stealing energy from Jianchen without his permission. Therefore, the energy was now entirely absorbed by Jianchen alone. The Heavenly Enchantress' eyes flew open as she realized just how fast Jianchen was absorbing the energy. After staring in shock for a few moments, she closed her eyes once more. Half a moment later, Jianchen's face broke out into a smile in the middle of his cultivation. As expected, he'd discovered that the energy from the Holy Land was indeed different from that from outside. There were many things he didn't understand mixed into it, like whatever was contained in the strange energy from Mercenary City. These were all impossible for him to comprehend. They seemed like rings of light that flashed in his head fleetingly, unable to be grasped. Such things were no longer strange to Jianchen. These were precisely the profound mysteries of the world, the level that he could not yet touch. This realization made Jianchen happy. Spending the rest of his time in a deep cultivational meditation, he began to absorb some of the fragments of the profound mysteries of the world. Originally, he had planned to try and study the illusionary flash, but with this newfound discovery, he completely ignored that previous notion. Quickly, Jianchen had spent the last 10 months of his time in the first area of the Holy Land. His strength had already reached the 4th cycle Earth Saint Master. And in those 10 months, Jianchen's comprehension of the profound mysteries of the world had substantially increased. His mind was like a world of spirits, and the profound mysteries were like a divine light that would occasionally shine. Sometimes, a strange thought would occur in his mind, but Jianchen had never been able to fully grasp just what the thought meant. At times, his thoughts would be vague as he tried to comprehend them, but they were mysteries for a reason. With the help of the fragments he had already, Jianchen was able to establish a strong foundation of the profound mysteries. In his current state, even if he were to absorb any more of the fragments, he wouldn't be able to understand the current fragments. Today was the day that half a year had passed. The 8th elder appeared by Jianchen's side and spoke. "Jianchen, it has been half a year. Follow me and I'll guide you out." Sighing with some regret, Jianchen had finally recognized the benefits of the Holy Land. The first area was capable of allowing him more time to understand the profound mysteries. Now that he had a good understanding of the benefits of this place, he was reluctant to leave. If only I could just stay here. Jianchen sighed at that thought. He knew that his wish was impossible. Thus he could only follow the 8th elder and depart from the first area. Seeing Jianchen's reluctant face, the 8th elder couldn't help but laugh. "Jianchen, are you unhappy to leave the Holy Lands? Haha, this place is truly a treasured area, if even saint rulers are attracted to this place so badly. You needn't worry, with you being this time's king of mercenaries, you'll have an opportunity to enter the Holy Lands once more at the next gathering of the mercenaries, after you become a saint ruler. Each time the Holy Land opens every 50 years, you may remain inside for 5 years. One can stay in here for 5 years, Then why was it that I am only able to stay for half a year? Jianshan asked with confusion. The eighth elder laughed. Only a saint ruler is qualified to stay for 5 years. Even the #1 ranking person in the gathering of the mercenaries is only qualified to stay for half a year. That is the rules of our mercenary city. Jianshan could find no faults in those words. The Holy Land was their territory after all. Anyone that wanted to enter the Holy Land had no right to dictate the rules, as they personally saw fit. Afterward, the eighth elder took Jianshan to a space gate and left the Holy Land with him. Chapter 348. Being watched crossing through the space gate, Jianshan found himself in the flower garden once more. Flowers bloomed everywhere, within a 50-meter radius, and the pavilion in the center towered over him, as if it were bathing within the field of flowers. Jianshan wasn't unfamiliar with this place, he had seen it once before. This was where he saw the 8th and 13th elder play chess. A flying figure quickly made its way toward Jianshan, before falling to the ground. It was a frail-looking middle-aged man that seemed quite scholarly, one who enjoyed reading more than anything else. This man wore white robes with grandiose stitching, and his eyes shone brightly with liveliness. Seeing how this man had just been soaring through the sky, Jianshan could tell that he was a heaven saint master. Without any neglect and respect, the man cupped his hands together and spoke politely. "You must be Jianshan." Quickly swallowing the surprise back down his throat, Jianshan nodded his head. "Correct, I am he. The elder ordered me to come and collect you, please follow me," the middle-aged man replied. With a wave of his hand, Jianshan suddenly felt a formidable amount of energy envelop his entire body, before he began to levitate through the air along with the middle-aged man. Could this heaven saint master be able to control the energy of the world? Jianshan couldn't help but think about this. Although he was calm on the outside, he was furiously trying to figure out how the energy that was enveloping him worked. The man was only traveling 10 meters above the ground, but the speed in which they were traveling was still very fast. Not long later, Jianshan and the man reached yet another space gate. Descending down to the ground, the middle-aged man spoke. "You can leave from here." Jianshan returned the way he came, through the space gate. He found himself in the plaza, where the gathering of the mercenaries had taken place. Suddenly, a person came walking out from one of the halls. It was the crane-haired elder. Handing him a badge, the elder said, "This is the emblem of the king of mercenaries. It is made of a special material, and has been interwoven with the rays, so that when Saint Force is used to activate it, the vital energy of the world, in a 10-kilometer distance, will be absorbed into it for later cultivational usage." Jianshan's heart leaped into his throat, as he immediately thought about the Flame Mercenaries and Changyang clan. This would definitely be a great boon for the two. Taking the emblem carefully into his own hands, Jianshan left the halls under the supervision of the commanding officer, and walked out onto the streets. Jianshan tilted his head up to look at the sun overhead with a happy expression. After spending a long time within the Holy Land with no sun, Jianshan felt comforted by the sun rays basking his body in its light. By now, half a year had already passed since the gathering of the mercenaries had ended, and the entire mercenary city had already gone back to its normal everyday life, with the exception of the season being hotter than before. However, the steady stream of people going in and out of the city was still there. Mercenary City was the holy city for mercenaries and merchants alike. Each of the 4 seasons was always a busy season, and many people traveled to the city. By now, winter had already passed and summer was fast approaching. With the scorching sun bearing down on the ground, it was already like the top of a burning slab of iron. Since Jianshan had spent a long time within the dark and damp holy grounds, he quickly found himself dry and thirsty. Walking to the middle plaza of Mercenary City, the plaza was now a 4-way intersection for everyone to cross. It was not as lively as it was half a year ago, but it still had many magical beast riders walking on the streets. As for the founder of Mercenary City Mo Tianyan, his statue stood tall and stared up toward the sky with a real lifelike figure. By now, Jianshan had already stored away some fragments of the profound mysteries of the world within his head. The statue of Mo Tianyan was completely different before compared to his eyes now. To him, the statue seemed to be completely filled with an endlessly profound mystery. Even the seemingly normal hands of the statue were filled with a strange substance that made the statue seem more lifelike. At the same time, it seemed as if the statue was harmonized with the world completely. After a moment of careful observation, Jianchen finally regained his bearings and respectfully bowed toward the statue before leaving the area. His understanding of Mercenary City was growing more and more, causing Jianchen's respect of Emotianyan to deepen as well. Aimlessly roaming around the streets, Jianchen finally entered an inn so that he could sit down and eat a meal. After residing within the Holy Land for so long, he hadn't a single thing to eat in ages. It was already afternoon and past the regular eating time, so the inn was relatively clean with Jianchen as the only customer. At that moment, 3 other men came walking in before sitting down at a table. "Waitress, some wine and meat over here." Staring at the 3 men, Jianchen looked back to his own table and decided on what to eat. "Hey Z, just wait until we finish our mission, then our mercenary group will become a B-ranked group." Another man spoke to the black-skinned man who had talked first. The dark-skinned man nodded his head. "Right, we were only a C-ranked group 3 years ago. But 3 years later, we've accomplished many missions, and our own merits aren't bad either. Just wait for this mission to be finished, and we will truly become a B-ranked group." The 3 men were seasoned mercenaries. While they ate, they would occasionally talk about other mercenary-related affairs, while simultaneously looking at Jianchen every so often. After some time, Jianchen had ate and drank his fill. With a satisfied clap he spoke. "Waitress, is there a room free to stay for the night? I would like to reserve one." Jianchen spoke as he placed a purple coin on the table. "Yes, sir. We'll prepare a room for you right away. Please wait one moment." The waitress retrieved the purple coin with a smile and immediately left to make preparations. With a look toward the 3 other men, Jianchen had a meaningful smile on his face as he walked over. "Fellow friends, what might your names be?" Jianchen's sudden movement toward them had caught the 3 off guard, but they quickly recovered and had one man cup his hands with a smile. "This one is called Jianhua, and these 2 are my close friends, He Zi and Bao Yu." I could tell that fellow brother's chi was quite unordinary. "What might be your name?" "I am called Jianchen." Jianchen smiled. Hearing that, the 3 men instantly grew shocked. With an incredulous look, the one called Jianhua turned to look at Jianchen with doubt. "Could you mean that you are the Jianchen that won the gathering of the mercenaries half a year ago?" "I am he." Jianchen's smile had a strange look to it. "Ah, so you are Jianchen, how disrespectful of me." "Truly disrespectful. Brother Jianchen's name is a name that is as well known as a thunderclap to the ears. Who would have known that the 3 of us would be as fortunate to be able to come across Brother Jianchen today?" Jianhua boomed outward with a respectful manner, as the other 2 hurriedly cupped their hands in a respectful salute. Seeing their attitudes, Jianchen revealed a cold smile on his face. "Fellow friends, spare me your theatrics. Speak of your plans right now." Hearing this, the 3 men looked at Jianchen with shock and vacant stares. Shaking his crew-cut hair-styled head, Jianhua spoke with confusion. "Brother Jianchen, what are you talking about?" Jianchen snorted. "You 3 have been following me for a good while. Do you think that I wouldn't know? Speak of your purpose, I hate wasting time." Still staring blankly at Jianchen, Jianhua could only smile as he continued to speak. "Brother Jianchen is quite the jokester. How would we have followed you? This meeting was a coincidence. If my instinct isn't wrong, then you 3 are either from the Jetta clan or Shi family." Jianchen's eyes grew cold as his sharp eyes pierced into them with his gaze. The 3 men continued to stare blankly while Jianhua forced a helpless smile on his face. "Brother Jianchen, I'm afraid I still don't understand. Might have you mistaken us for someone else?" Seeing how their faces didn't seem to be hiding anything, Jianchen knew that asking any more questions would be pointless. Without wasting any more time, he left for the 2nd floor of the inn. Right as Jianchen had disappeared, the shocked expressions of the 3 men instantly grew dark as they leaned close to each other. "I didn't think he would be that vigilant. He already spotted us from far away." Jianhua whispered. What should we do now? Hazy asked. What else could we do? Let's report back to the elder. Afterward, the three men placed a purple coin down and left the inn at a fast pace. Within a grand-looking inn, the furious expression of an elder stared at the three men in front of him as he pointed and shouted curses at them. Useless. Absolutely useless. All I see is a pile of garbage right in front of me. You've let the person you were trailing see you. Just what use are you for other than eating? These three men were Jianhua, Hazy, and Baoyu. Each one of them had a pale face as they shivered in fear and didn't dare to utter a single sound. Elder, this isn't our fault. Our target was already extremely careful and far too powerful. Otherwise, we wouldn't have been noticed. Jianhua spoke with a quavering voice of fear in hopes of placating the elder's anger. At that moment, the doors to the room opened as another elder came walking in. Upon seeing the three men in front of him, the new-coming elder narrowed his eyes and spoke. Fourth elder, what happened? These three pieces of garbage were easily detected by Jian Chun after his return from the Holy Lands. With their presences being detected, all of our plans have now gone up in smoke. The fourth elder exploded with anger as he swore once more. Chapter 349. A conversation. Hearing the words of the fourth elder, the newly arrived elder grew serious as he whispered. It can't be, although we haven't come across him before, he was still able to spot us? That is an exceptionally smart mind with a cautious character. Now that he knows we are watching him, unless he is sure he can escape our grasp, he will definitely refuse to leave Mercenary City. But that's just it. Our plans were to wait for Jian Chun to leave Mercenary City before we come and reclaim our items. But at the most critical moment, these three pieces of trash ruined it all. Now Jian Chun knows that we are watching him. He won't dare leave the city now. The fourth elder spoke. AI, if I had known Jian Chun's skills at detection were so high, I would have tracked him myself. Now that the situation is like this, it's quite troublesome. If Jian Chun continues to stay within Mercenary City, then we won't be able to make a move at all. The elder spoke with a sigh. Third elder, you are the intelligent one. What should we do in this case? The fourth elder calmed himself down. The third elder's eyebrows creased together in thought as he muttered. This Jian Chun was able to become the king of mercenaries with relative ease. A person like this is by no means ordinary. Since he knows that we are currently watching him, there is no need for us to be secretive about it anymore. Third elder, let us go talk with him and see if there is any way for him to hand over the seal of Treasure Mountain to us. As for the death of the third young lord, we can wait another day. At the very least, we can recover the ruler armament. The fourth elder nodded his head. I thought as much. AI. The family head was far too greedy. If only he hadn't wanted the third lord to try and take the Salinar bow from the Huang family during the competition. In the end, we didn't obtain the bow, and the seal of Treasure Mountain was lost to us. This is truly a disgrace. Forget it, fourth elder. There's no use trying to think any more about this matter. Right now we should meet with Jian Chun and hope that we can reclaim the ruler armament. Here, eat this. The third elder spoke as he handed a red pill toward the fourth elder. The fourth elder had a lot of trust in the third elder, and so without any more questions he took the pill and swallowed it. Afterward, the two elders headed toward the inn Jianhua had explicitly said house Jian Chun. At this moment, Jian Chun was on his bed and was studying the illusionary flash once more. The moment he sensed the elders, he opened his eyes and stared at them. The third elder stared at Jian Chun for a moment before paying a compliment. No wonder you are the king of mercenaries with such a talent like this. Jian Chun, we are from the Shi family. If our third lord Shi Xiangran has ever offended you in the past, we would sincerely like to apologize to you and hope that you do not take this personally. Since the other party had not been rude to him, Jian Chun returned the smile. Senior is too polite. For such a small matter, I, Jian Chun, have already forgotten about it. As long as no one else looks for trouble with me, then I will not recklessly declare anyone as my enemy. The fourth elder nearly rolled his eyes at Jian Chun's words as he cursed him internally. Jian Chun had killed their third lord, and had also stolen the Shi family's seal of Treasure Mountain heirloom. Therefore, it was only natural that the Shi family would chase after Jianchen. The third elder laughed. Haha, brother Jianchen is really courageous. I wonder if you are willing to return the seal of Treasure Mountain to our Shi family? We should exchange our weapons of war for gifts of silk. After all, the seal of Treasure Mountain cannot be activated without a combination of our Shi family's blood and a special secret technique. It's useless in your possession, and it would make our Shi family feel extreme resent toward you. This will greatly impact your relationship with us. Can you please consider our offer? Naturally, if you are willing to return the seal of Treasure Mountain, then we will naturally give you fair compensation for it. The third elder's words were sweet to hear, and he held no ill intent behind them. Even his tone had been calm and cordial, without any sense of anger. Unfortunately, Jianchen knew better than to believe his words and sighed in disappointment. I'm afraid to disappoint seniors, but the seal of Treasure Mountain has already been handed to someone else, and is no longer within my possession. Jianchen's words caused the two elders to reveal horrified expressions as the third elder tried to keep the calm look on his face. What? The seal of Treasure Mountain is no longer on you? Is that true? When I entered the Holy Land, I gave the seal of Treasure Mountain to Qinji, so it is no longer on me. Jianchen spoke. You hoodlum. To give away such a precious treasure as if passing a gift, you ruffian. Are you not afraid of death? The treasure of the Shi family. Just how could you give it away? The fourth elder exploded with a furious rage, as he pointed at Jianchen with a quivering finger. If it were not for Mercenary City, he would have long since tried to strangle Jianchen. The third elder's expression grew dim, as his eyes gained an unholy light to them. Then, while he was thinking, he suddenly spat out a mouthful of blood, and began to write on the air with his blood, forming a complicated-looking array after some time. With an explosive shout, the third elder pressed against the core of the formation. Seal of Treasure Mountain, return! As soon as he spoke, Jianchen's expression grew startled, as he felt the seal of Treasure Mountain within his space ring suddenly begin to tremble and shake, as if trying to separate itself from the space ring. Jianchen's heart skipped a beat. He hadn't thought that there would be such a summoning skill. Fortunately, the attractive force was not all that strong. Otherwise, Jianchen was afraid that the space ring would be unable to hold it in. Jianchen clenched the space ring tightly, so that the seal of Treasure Mountain wouldn't escape. The bloody formation slowly began to grow faint before disappearing from view completely. However, the third elder who had drawn the formation grew pale in the face. It would appear that this secret skill had used up a lot of his energy. Jianchen, you cannot deceive us. It is still within your possession. You should hand it over to us, so we may return home without any further conflict. The third elder's expression was weaker than before, but the honest face was still there. As it was now, Jianchen didn't bother to hide any more secrets and spoke. Seniors, you should go home. Are you certain that you will not return the seal of Treasure Mountain? It will only bring you more trouble. The third elder asked Jianchen once more for confirmation. That is not your business to worry about. Jianchen didn't plan to return the seal of Treasure Mountain. In fact, he would rather give it to someone else, rather than return it to the Shi family. He knew that even if he were to give it back, the family would still not forgive him. He was already well experienced in matters like this. The third elder sighed before taking out an embroidered pouch. Jianchen, do you know what this is? When Jianchen didn't answer, the third elder continued to speak. This is a poison I spent a dear sum of money to purchase from a friend. Inside is what is known as the 100 Poisons powder. Its poison is extremely toxic, and is the amalgamation of hundreds of poisons. It is without flavor or color, and can be spread through the air. As long as this poison enters the body, then even a Heaven Saint Master will not escape unharmed. Aside from a specially made antidote, this poison is incurable. Hearing this, even the fourth elder had become surprised. Third elder, you truly are a mastermind. How admirable. No wonder you had me eat a pill early, that was the antidote. The third elder laughed and nodded his head before looking at Jianchen smugly, confident that he had power over Jianchen's life now. Jianchen also smiled as he looked at the elder. Third elder, if you could tell me, am I poisoned? Correct. The third elder nodded his head. Jianshan, ever since we entered the room, I used this powder to send poison through the air, spreading it throughout the room. You've already breathed in the poison, but you weren't able to detect it. Unable to stop himself from laughing, Jianshan threw his head up carelessly for a moment before looking back to the indescribable faces of the third and fourth elders. Third elder, I've neglected to tell you, but my body is immune to many things. Your poison holds no power over me. Jianshan laughed as if he had shared a funny joke. The third elder's face looked as if he had suffered a terrible blow, as his expression immediately scrunched up to look rather vicious and ugly-like. Originally, he had thought he had finally cornered Jianshan, but Jianshan had somehow managed to cross the wall he had put up without any effort at all. Fourth elder, we're going. With a swish of his robes, the third elder returned the powder to his sleeves and turned around. The fourth elder glared coldly at Jianshan. Youngster, you had best stay within Mercenary City for the rest of your life. With that, the fourth elder left the building. That night, while Jianshan had noticed that there were no more uninvited guests, countless of hidden eyes had started to look at Jianshan around the clock. Jianshan knew that both the Jetta clan and Shi family were now monitoring him in an effort to prevent him from escaping from under their eyes and take their ruler armament away with him. Chapter 350. Departing with ease. As for the Jetta clan monitoring him, Jianshan didn't care at all. This sort of development was something he had predicted a long time ago. On the second day, Jianshan left his room to stroll around the streets of Mercenary City. He walked east, he wandered west. There was no definite location in sight. But right behind him, several groups of men followed him from a decent ways away. Since they no longer feared being detected by Jianshan, they didn't care for being stealthy. Jianshan led the group on a day-long walk, before finally returning back to his inn for the night. On the day after, Jianshan left the inn once more. When he left, the attendants behind him followed Jianshan 30 meters away. Not even caring to look at the group of people behind him, Jianshan wandered around Mercenary City once more. This time, staring toward the east while walking toward the west, as if to enjoy the scenery around him. Soon, Jianshan came across a gambling house. With a smile that seemed ready to crack a joke, Jianshan walked into the place with the people behind him following him in. Within the gambling house, countless men were enthusiastically making noise. Those who had won money were crying out in joy, while those who had lost were all sighing with regret. Jianshan swiftly traveled through a group of people to an even larger crowd, before blending in with the other gamblers. His figure instantly disappeared from the gambling house, leaving his stalkers to anxiously look around themselves. Emerging from the gambling house, Jianshan immediately switched streets and looked for a different inn to hide himself in. But by that night, Jianshan was found out once more as his stalkers surrounded the inn. What an annoying group of flies. Jianshan sighed to himself without any choice. With this group of people constantly chasing him, Jianshan couldn't leave Mercenary City. In the case the Jetta clan and Shi family leaders found out that he had left and his whereabouts, he would most likely be killed. The next day, Jianshan left his room and headed for the plaza, where the palace was in Mercenary City. This area was where the inner city was connected to the outer road and the outside world. Since Jianshan was the king of mercenaries, his special identity allowed him to enter this place without any obstructions. However, a middle-aged man came to meet him this time instead. Senior, this one would like to see the elders, would that be possible? Jianshan asked him politely. The man shook his head. Out of the question. Seeing the elders is not something that can be so easily done. Your ceremony has long since passed. Unless the elders wish to see you first, you cannot see them. Jianshan had a dejected look on his face, but he asked, then would it be possible for me to leave Mercenary City via the space gate? Our Mercenary City's space gate is for entering the city, which can only be used by the inner members. As for exiting the city via the space gate, you must have the permission of the elders, otherwise, even the inner members are forbidden from using it. The man explained. Depressed, Jianshan left the area. If he had known about this earlier, he would have asked the 8th elder for permission to leave the city during his time in the Holy Land. Wandering around the streets of Mercenary City once more, Jianchen began to think of an escape plan. After he had used the gambling house to escape his stalkers, they were now cautious of a second escape plan. Even the distance had decreased from 20 meters to a measly 5 meters. Even more audaciously, the group were now following Jianchen with an unbridled amount of arrogance, causing Jianchen no small amount of annoyance. If it were not for the fact that Mercenary City forbade violence, then Jianchen would have beaten them all up long ago for their arrogance. Jianchen knew that shaking them off at such a close distance would be too difficult. Even if he were to use the illusionary flash, if there were any wind attribute cultivators who were Earth Saint Masters, then at least 2 of them would be able to catch up with him. That night, Jianchen entered a random inn and ordered a meal and a room for the night to rest. The ones that were still following him had stumbled in as well and booked the adjacent rooms. The other group of men surrounded the inn in tight proximity to avoid Jianchen from escaping from them. The following morning, Jianchen left his room once more after eating an early breakfast. Then he walked back into his room and began to cultivate. For the next couple of days, Jianchen hadn't left his room at all other than to eat a meal. The rest of his time was spent studying the illusionary flash. While the men outside his room still kept up a vigilant watch, they all realized that Jianchen was most likely planning to stay where he was for a long time, so they were now relatively relaxed. They needn't be on guard as they were a few days ago, but they still maintained a strong watch over Jianchen. No matter if it was day or night, there would still be someone watching, so it was as if there was a giant net being placed over the inn. In a flash, 10 days had passed by with Jianchen spending most of his time researching the illusionary flash. If he could understand the fragments of the profound mysteries of the world within his mind, then his comprehension of the illusionary flash would multiply several times over. He had already mastered the basics, allowing his speed to be double that of when he was in the gathering of the mercenaries. By now, Jianchen was almost comparable in speed to a 6th cycle wind attributed Earth Saint Master. At the very least, he could survive against a Heaven Saint Master. Of course, this was only just a conservative guess. He had only mastered the basics, so he could only guess how fast he was. Just how fast he was exactly, he didn't know since he hadn't been able to test it out yet. Early one morning, Jianchen slowly opened his eyes from his meditative posture and looked at the blooming skies. Muttering to himself, he spoke, "It's about time to leave." With that, Jianchen got off his bed and allowed a faint glow of azure and violet to be emitted from his finger. Floating overhead, it reached the wooden ceiling and immediately bore a hole into it, causing the wooden ceiling to shred apart like tofu. With a gentle push, Jianchen removed the half-a-meter-long circumference hole from the ceiling, revealing a single hole. Seeing the large hole, Jianchen cracked a smile before putting the wooden hole back in place for the meanwhile, and then he left the room. As per usual, Jianchen walked down for an early breakfast. After finishing, he walked back to his room and closed the doors and windows. Immediately, he began to take out a variety of herbs from within his space ring to begin to paint his face. Half an hour later, Jianchen lifted his head to reveal a completely different face than before. By now, his face was that of an ordinary-looking middle-aged man with several cut marks, and even a beard, giving him a fierce look. Looking at his own reflection, Jianchen nodded his head. Suddenly, a cracking sound could be heard as Jianchen's stature suddenly grew thicker, and even his height was increased. In no time at all, Jianchen's physique had grown burly, the complete opposite of what he was before. Adorning a black robe from within his space belt, Jianchen once more cut off the long hair that had trailed down his shoulders, leaving behind a greatly diminished amount. Once this had been done, Jianchen was a completely different person in appearance with absolutely nothing that could link the two together. Even Ming Dong and Qin Xiao, who were both friends with Jianchen, would not have been able to tell that this burly-looking man was him. Inspecting his face once more, Jianchen made sure nothing had been overlooked before taking out the wooden hole cover from the ceiling. With a tiny leap, he immediately landed in the room above before replacing the hole. Closing the door to the room, Jianchen walked outside. And just like that, Jianchen had been able to avoid the eyes and ears of everyone else. As he strutted his way out, not a single person doubted him, let alone looked at him. As a result of the past few days, Jianchen had deliberately allowed everyone to become accustomed to his habits. After his morning meal, he would shut himself up in his room in order to cultivate. Not a single one of them had figured that Jianchen would change his appearances and try to leave. Walking onto the streets, Jianchen walked himself into a bustling inn that had plenty of people already inside. After ordering a room, Jianchen disguised himself once more as a thin-looking middle-aged man before leaving the building. With all of this done, Jianchen walked to a store where he bought a map and several other items necessary for living in the rural areas. Then, he walked to an isolated alleyway and changed his appearances once more. This time, Jianchen disguised himself as a prominent son of a powerful clan. With a wig on his head and a Class 3 magical beast, Jianchen rode the magical beast toward the merchant's gate outside of the city, where he took a leading position in front of a merchant group that was just getting ready to leave. This way, he was able to make the facade that he was the leader of the caravan group. Chapter 351. Hero Saving the Girl, 1. Half a day later, Jianchen had managed to evade detection by following the caravan out of Mercenary City. Walking without leaving behind any tracks, not a single person was able to detect him. After some distance away, Jianchen split off on his own path, away from the caravan, and the moment he saw no one around, he dismounted from his magical beast and began to use his illusionary flash. Whoosh! With the illusionary flash being utilized, Jianchen shot forward like an arrow, leaving behind only the faintest of his mirror image as he flew at tremendous speeds. Running at full speed, Jianchen's ears could only feel the wind blow past them in a deafening manner, causing him to be unable to hear anything. Even the scenery on both sides of him was rapidly blurring away, allowing him to only see a mixture of color, nothing too specific. This was the very first time that Jianchen could use the illusionary flash to travel at high speeds across such a vast space of land, so the speed he was traveling at had astounded Jianchen himself. With this speed, Jianchen was certain that he could beat a sixth cycle wind, attributed Earth Saint Master in speed, and only a flying Heaven Saint Master would be able to keep up. With this inconceivable speed brought to him by the illusionary flash, Jianchen could only feel an intense amount of satisfaction. He wouldn't fear even a Heaven Saint Master chasing him now. Plus, his mastery over the illusionary flash was only limited to the very basics still. Jianchen couldn't help but wonder, if he were to master it to an extremely high level, just how fast could he travel? The illusionary flash was endlessly profound. Jianchen had spent a long time just reaching a mastery over the basics. The difficulty as he grew to a higher level of understanding would only grow more. Ever since the beginning, when he had first started to learn the illusionary flash, Jianchen felt that there was a deep connection with space regarding the illusionary flash. This had meant that Jianchen would need to understand the profound mysteries of the world, which by extension had also meant that until he was a saint ruler, he would not be able to master the illusionary flash to a high extent. It's no wonder that this was an ancient skill that the past races had deemed to be a supreme technique that surpassed most in its complexity. Jianchen thought to himself. Flying southward with the use of the illusionary flash, Jianchen was trying his best to avoid the Jiedu clan and Sure family's Heaven Saint Masters should they come. Across the vast plains, Jianchen's figure had turned into a missile that flew across the world. With the battle skill that allowed him to travel far beyond what he used to be capable of doing, the intense gales of wind had kicked up a giant dust trail. It was quite a stunning sight, but fortunately for Jianchen, there was not a single person around, so no one would be able to see it. 2 hours later, Jianchen had traveled countless of kilometers away from Mercenary City. In the past, if Jianchen were to try to guess how much he could travel within this same time span, he would never guess the amount he was traversing now. However, in these 2 hours, Jianchen's 4th cycle Earth Saint Master level of Saint Force had already been halfway used up. The illusionary flash was a supplementary battle skill of the Heaven Saint tier level, and not a Saint tier battle skill. Thus, The amount of Saint Force used for this battle skill was terrifying, and Jianshan himself would be only capable of keeping it up for 4 hours. Ho! Suddenly, 5 kilometers away, a 3-meter-tall black devil panther had discovered Jianshan and instantly flew toward him like a speeding bullet. Any panther-modeled magical beast was especially adept in speed. Furthermore, this was a Class 5 magical beast, so its speed was even higher. Staring at the devil panther with contempt, Jianshan ignored it and continued to blow past it with his speed maxed out. The panther's maw bit at empty space before howling angrily and chased after Jianshan. Despite it being extremely fast, Jianshan was even faster, so the distance between the two only increased more and more. Another hour later, Jianshan had traveled over at least 1,000 kilometers away from Mercenary City. With no other choice but to stop, he looked for a safe-looking spot to rest for a moment. Taking out a Class 5 monster core, he began to absorb the energy within to recover. After those 3 hours of running, Jianshan had already used up 3/4 of his total Saint Force. If he didn't recover, and he were to come across any unexpected trouble, he would be in no shape to deal with it. After 4 hours, Jianshan's Saint Force had been fully recovered, allowing him to travel with the illusionary flash once more. 2 days later in Mercenary City, the men on the watch for Jianshan hadn't seen any signs of Jianshan. However, each one had thought that Jianshan was merely stuck within a deep meditative study. After all, men of their caliber would often go for days without eating or drinking in order to focus on their cultivation. So this did not worry the stalkers too much. There were also countless men surrounding the inn day and night as well. Even a housefly wouldn't be able to escape if they wanted, let alone a person. At this moment, several mercenaries entered the inn. After a meal, one of them climbed up to his reserved room. Bang! Very quickly, a loud sound could be heard throughout the tavern as a furious person roared from the second story. Motherfucking bastard shopkeeper, just what kind of broken inn are you running? Just how could there be a hole on the ground? Fuck, I goddamn fell from the 3rd floor to the 2nd floor. Hearing the angry roar, all of the people in charge of watching out for Jianshan were all stunned and instantly responded. Immediately running for the 2nd floor where Jianshan's room was, they flung open the door only to discover that a single man was swearing furiously on the floor. On the ceiling was a single half-meter wide hole. Not good, he escaped. Everyone instantly grew pale, as they immediately reported to the others before setting out to look for him. Not too long after, news of Jianshan's sudden disappearance had been reported to the Jetta clan and Sher family elders. Immediately, the 2 elders exploded with rage as they rained curses on their men. Useless, you useless pieces of trash. Are each and every single one of you blind? You are all truly trash. With so many people watching just one man, he still managed to slip away from under your nose. Hurry up and look for him. If you can't find him, then don't even bother coming back. The 4th elder of the Sher family howled. The 3rd elder was calmer than the 4th, and looked down at the kneeling men in front of him. You didn't see Jianshan leave or even when? One man instantly reported all that he knew to the 3rd elder. Hearing this, the elder hummed in contemplation. It seems that this Jianshan had altered his appearances and slipped away in secret. I didn't think that he would have such a skill set like this. How extraordinary. 3rd elder, then what should we do now? The 4th elder spoke. The 3rd elder had been the smarter one of the two, and so he wanted to see just what new plan could be made. What else? Have everyone start searching for Jianshan, and send news back to the clan, so they can send over some help. Then, have someone go and put a bounty on Jianshan. The 3rd elder spoke. Jianshan is the king of mercenaries. If we were to go to the mercenary union and place a bounty on him, then wouldn't the entire mercenary city know that we are his enemies? This would reflect poorly on us. The 4th elder was afraid of the repercussions. Don't worry, 4th elder. Even if they know, the city wouldn't bother to interfere. It would be only if they had a connection with each other that they would interfere. But other than that, they won't. The 3rd elder spoke with confidence. Putting his faith in the 3rd elder, the 4th elder commanded to the others. You've all heard the 3rd elder's words, go and do it. At the same time, The two Jetta clan elders were glaring dangerously at the group of men in front of them. The ones responsible for watching over Jianchen. A pile of trash. Hurry up and look for him. Hire some men to comb the city. And if you don't find him, then don't ever return. Yes, yes, we will go immediately. The few men all spoke as if hoping to gain amnesty before retreating out of the room. After 2 whole days of constant journeying, Jianchen had figured that he had already traveled over 10,000 kilometers away from Mercenary City and was now temporarily safe. Within a small brook nearby, Jianchen began to bathe himself. Then, taking a new set of clothes from his space belt, he changed his appearances once more to resemble an ordinary-looking youth before setting out once more. Because of the tournament, many people knew of Jianchen thus. He had no other choice but to change his appearances. Afterward, Jianchen slowed down his pace. From what he knew of his position on the map, there was another second-class city 100 kilometers away. The sounds of battle could be heard not too far away. Upon closer observation, Jianchen noticed that it seemed to be a battle royale, with around 100 ordinary-looking people riding on horses. Judging from their appearances, they looked to be bandits. The opposing side only had 30 men, who were all desperately trying to defend a luxurious-looking caravan. At this sight, Jianchen couldn't help but think about the time when the boundless bandits had attacked him when he was escaping from the Jessen kingdom. At that moment, Jianchen had only been a lowly saint and had been driven to the brink of exhaustion by a saint master. At that time, a great saint master had been an unbearably strong expert. But now several years had passed. Even the strongest of great saint masters was only a horsefly to him. But this still didn't prevent Jianchen from sighing. Chapter 352. Hero saving the girl too. You Blackwind bandits are too annoying. We gave you money already. Why don't you leave now? A middle-aged man slashed at 3 of the Blackwind bandits with a furious howl. From the 100 bandits, one man who seemed to be the leader began to laugh. I've heard your Lanming clan has a beautiful-looking miss with a divine grace. Why don't you deliver her to Dang Yajai of the Dang family to be his bride? To your Lanming clan, this won't be such a bad thing. Don't you even dream about it. The miss is the beloved pearl of our clan, and the one our patriarch dotes upon most. If the miss were to have an accident here and now, then our Lanming clan would do everything possible to track down you Blackwind bandits. The middle-aged man roared. This person had to be the leader of their group. Ha ha ha, your Lanming clan is a clan we are well aware of. With just your Lanming clan alone, us Blackwind bandits aren't even afraid. The leader of the bandits boomed with laughter. My brothers, carry on. When the carriage is delivered to the Dang family, everyone will definitely benefit from this. Immediately, the morale of the bandits skyrocketed as they all began to fight even more passionately, bringing the 30 bodyguards under an overwhelming amount of pressure. Some of the bodyguards were slashed down by the weapons of the bandits and fell to the floor as blood spilled on the ground. Within a flash, only 20 men remained to defend desperately. As for the Blackwind bandits, it was as if they were on stimulants as their fighting strength and enthusiasm increased. Each sword strike grew heavier and filled the air with saint force. In a short moment, another 10 bodyguards had fallen while barely a dozen of the bandits had died. Their casualties were very minimal, keeping an overwhelming advantage over the other party. You will regret this. Be prepared to pay the price. Our patriarch will definitely never forgive you. The middle-aged man roared fiercely. He was a peak great saint master, but at the moment, he was fighting 2 middle great saint masters who pushed him to his limits. With such a heavy battle, his wounds were no longer few and minor. Blood trailed down his body at a fast rate, and if this continued, he wouldn't be able to go on for much longer. Ha ha ha, your words are too serious. When your precious daughter of the Lanming clan becomes the bride to Yajai, the two sides will be family. Just how could you point your weapons at family? Don't you feel that this is a wrong thing to do? The bandit laughed. The middle-aged man's face began to ashen as his eyes narrowed in hatred. Unfortunately, he was helpless at the moment. The last 10 remaining men were all surrounded by the Blackwind bandits, and their power was not enough for them to find a way out of this situation. Seeing each and every single one of the bodyguards beside him fall, the man's face finally began to show the tiniest amount of despair. This old man will throw away his life if it means that you won't be able to claim your prize so easily. The man howled as the saint force within him burst outward. Abandoning all defense, he began to fight against 3 people at once. Quickly, he's about to use his Earth-tier battle skill. The bandit leader barked out. Even as the bandit leader spoke, the middle-aged man had already turned to slash his giant sword at the man. The 2 other great saint masters that were fighting with the man earlier were clearly experienced with fighting the leader. They matched each other's movements and tried to break the man away from his concentration. Bang! Following the loud bang, a crater formed right underneath everyone's feet, causing all 4 of the fighters to fall down. Each one of them grew pale in face and began to spit out a mouthful of blood. The middle-aged man tried to crawl up from the ground, but his wounds were already quite serious. A nearby bloody bodyguard gave support to him with a worried look. "Captain, are you all right?" The other 3 bandits hadn't received any major damage, so they had quickly gotten back up. One of them roared out, "Hurry up and kill them, but don't damage the carriage." "Yes," every bandit cried out in agreement, as they flew at the remaining bodyguards with their saint weapons ready to strike. PCH, 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 Just as several of the bandits brought their hands down to strike, something strange happened. Every single bandits had their heads sent flying into the air, before their headless bodies began to splurt blood a meter high into the air. This sudden development caused everyone to become startled with some puzzlement. Not a single one of them had known just what happened, and so they couldn't react to it. Heads of the bandits continued to fly into the air as each bandit lost their head. As pumpkin-sized heads filled the air, many of the bandits were left dead on the ground within the time span of 2 short breaths. This bizarre event caused the remaining 10 bodyguards to look on with eyes wide open in utter disbelief at what was happening right in front of them. What's happening? Who's killing them? The bandit leader cried out in terror as he watched the headless bodies of his comrades rain blood onto the ground. His voice was quavering as he spoke, and of the 100 men they had started with, only 3 were left. Suddenly, even his body froze up too as he spotted the terrifying image of a black-robed person flying at him from the side. The figure was a rather skinny-looking youth, who was wearing a black robe. His hair was extremely short, and his appearance was quite average. If he were to be placed within a large group of people, he wouldn't be out of place. Most importantly was the fact that he didn't look a year older than 30. The leader of the bandits stared in horror at the oncoming youth before stuttering, Is it you that's killing my men?" Staring at the remaining 3 bandits, and then at the 10 bodyguards, and the middle-aged man who was severely injured, the youth took out a pill filled with radiant saint force from his space ring, and threw it at the middle-aged man to eat. Swallowing the pill that had been thrown into his mouth, the man's face began to improve as he felt the effects of the pill. This is a radiant spirit pill. In his shock, the middle-aged man immediately cupped his hands in gratitude toward Jianshen. "This one thanks my lord. Our Lanming clan will definitely thank you." "That won't be needed. I only came here in passing, nothing more," the black-robed youth that was Jianshen stated. The 3 remaining bandits all looked at Jianshen with a stupefied look. So many people had been killed by this black-robed youth within just a few moments. This type of strength had left them utterly confused and afraid. Even the Dang family wouldn't have such a strength like this. "Aranawe. He's an Earth Saint Ma Master." One of the bandits stuttered with fear as his face lost all color. Even his speech had been utterly incomprehensible as he tried to run away. The other 2 men had been spooked at the mention of an Earth Saint Master, and tried to run on foot as well. "If you don't wish to die, then stand still." A loud command could be heard, causing all 3 bandits to nearly fall down to the ground due to the overwhelming power. But they managed to stand still in fear of making another step. "Oh great swordsman, please forgive us. We have a family to take care of and feed. They are depending on us to take care of them. But if we are to die, then they will have no way of living." One of the bandits cried with mucus dripping from his nose. Against an Earth Saint Master expert, not a single one of the 3 believed they could escape from him. You three come here. Jian Chen's eyes grew cold as he commanded the bandits. Each of the three bandits looked at each other with a desperate look before apprehensively approaching Jian Chen and kowtowing to him. Looking at the three men, Jian Chen turned to the other middle-aged man behind him. These three men you can take care of. I thank the young lord. The middle-aged man spoke out in gratitude before commanding the other three. Find some rope to tie these three up. We shall deliver them to our patriarch. Upon this, the three bandits grew even more pale. But with an Earth Saint Master right there looking at them, they didn't dare make any sudden movements. Soon the three bandits were tied up like hay bales. Guard Yin, what is going on now? Suddenly, the soft sound of a lady could be heard from within the carriage. The middle-aged man immediately spoke up to respond. My lady, there is nothing to report now. A strong young lord was able to rescue us. My lady, if you could please come out to greet our benefactor. For a moment, the carriage went silent before the doors finally opened, and a red-robed girl stepped outside. This was a beautiful young girl with a near-devastating beauty. Her skin was like pure white jade, and her eyes seemed as if they were capable of enrapturing any soul that gazed into them. From her appearances, she looked to be around 22 years old, and had a scholarly look to her. She hadn't differed from Huang Wan's appearance much, but the major difference between the two was that this girl was kind in nature in contrast to Huang Wan's crafty and headstrong personality. Because of the frightful event that was happening to her earlier, her face was still quite pale, since not enough blood was reaching her face. Her eyes still had a lingering trace of fear, but as she looked around at the bloody landscape, her entire body began to tremble and grew even more pale than before, causing everyone to be worried. This was the very first time she had ever seen such a bloody massacre. Trying to force herself to become calm, her eyes quickly landed upon the black-robed Jian Chen. Immediately curtsying, she spoke kindly. We thank our hero for his assistance. We are eternally grateful to the hero. Jian Chen waved his hand nonchalantly. It was no bother since I was passing along the same route. I've come to dislike bandits as well. Since your group is safe now, I shall be leaving goodbye. With that, Jian Chen turned to leave. Although he saw that the young lady was quite beautiful, Jian Chen was not a lecherous man. For such a pretty sight like her, Jian Chen saw nothing but trouble. Not a single person had thought that Jian Chen would have been so blunt with his words and leave when he said he would. The middle-aged man hurriedly came up to block his path and pleaded with him. Fellow hero, please take a look at the wounds of us guards. Moving would be no problem, but fighting is outside of our grasp. Please take mercy and escort us to Wuxia City. Otherwise, if we were to come across someone with wicked intentions on the road, we won't be able to defend ourselves. Jian Chen had some hesitation at accepting such a request, but in the end he agreed since Wuxia City was also the same place he was traveling to. Chapter 353. The Lanming clan of Wuxia City. When Jian Chen had agreed to protect them until the city, the bodyguards had been ecstatic. To have an Earth Saint Master join their ranks, their journey would be undoubtedly safe without worry or fear of anyone with malicious intent, like the Blackwind bandits. Jian Chen had been courteously invited to sit in the carriage, and death be unto those who would ask Jian Chen to travel on foot. All of the horses that they had either been killed or had run away. Aside from the 3 Class 2 magical beasts pulling the carriage, there were no other horse to sit on. Unable to refuse the hospitality and well-meaning of the middle-aged man, Jian Chen chose to sit on the part of the carriage where the driver would usually sit to direct the animals. Little brother, the wind outside is quite big, you should head in. The man smiled at Jian Chen with a polite air. An Earth Saint Master would be considered a top-tier expert within Wuxia City, and the Lanming clan could be considered one of the 2 top clans, since even their patriarch was an Earth Saint Master. If they were to lose their patriarch, then their position within Wuxia City would irrevocably change. At the very best, the clan would be considered a high-quality clan. There were already a few dozen of these types of clan in Wuxia City, so it could be seen that an Earth Saint Master was a high and mighty position. It's fine, I enjoy sitting out here. Jian Chen spoke. The middle-aged man didn't bother to say any more. If he were to try to convince him to sit elsewhere, then it would do more harm than good. At this moment, a delicate fragrance could be smelled from behind as the doors to the carriage opened up, revealing the red-robed girl who was walking out. Sitting next to Jian Chun on the driver's seat, her beautiful eyes stared at Jian Chun as she spoke gently. Many thanks to our benefactor for saving our lives. This girl is named Laning. If I may ask for my lord's name? Jian Chun swept a glance at the beauty next to him, before turning back to look at the front. You flatter me too much. My name is Yang Yutian. So it is Lord Yang. Where might Lord Yang be traveling to? And where might Lord Yang be from? Laning's eyes stared at Jian Chun with her bright eyes, but when she saw the slightest furrowing of Jian Chun's eyebrows, she spoke up in a hurry. This girl was just curious. If Lord Yang does not wish to answer, then please forgive this girl for being rude. Laughing, Jian Chun spoke. The young lady is too serious. I've come from a faraway nation to travel the entire continent and increase my knowledge and experience. The sky is my ceiling, and the earth is my bed as I travel. Then it is no wonder Lord Yang is so strong with a long process of cultivation like that. The carriage continued to move slowly as the remaining 10 bodyguards traveled close by the sides of it. On the road they came across several ordinary mercenary groups who were riding horses. The middle-aged man had then spent a wealthy sum of money to purchase a few horses, so that the 10 bodyguards could double up on a horse. For hours later, the 10 blood-soaked bodyguards and the carriage finally entered the city. On the road, everyone had begun to notice their identities and began to talk among themselves. Isn't that the Lanming clan? For them to have so many injuries, did a powerful faction decide to be their enemy? The Lanming clan is one of the top 2 clans of Thascia City. I've heard their patriarch is an Earth Saint Master as well. Who could possibly dare try to provoke the Lanming clan and the Huanyao clan? The black-robed Jian Chun continued to sit on the driver's seat of the carriage, as the bodyguards nearby guided him, while Laning remained inside the carriage. Suddenly, the sounds of frantic pattering could be heard up ahead, as a large group of magical beast riders charged toward the carriage. Charging ahead of them was an elderly man who was riding the Class 4 magical beast, Storm Wolf. The moment the middle-aged man saw the elder, an immediate smile greeted his face as he cried out, "It's the Patriarch! The Patriarch is here!" The Patriarch of the Lanming clan quickly reached the entire group, causing the entire group of bodyguards to salute. "We greet the Patriarch!" Without even glancing at them, he flew off of his mount with an anxious expression, and cried out loud with an anxious worry. Inger! Are you alright, Inger?" The doors to the carriage opened as the red-robed Laning walked out. When she saw the elder, she immediately began to cry out with tears. "Grandfather!" Seeing that Laning was completely unharmed, the elder's face immediately slackened as he jumped to hug Laning. "It's okay then. Everything is fine now, Inger. This was your grandfather's fault. I didn't hire a good enough bodyguard, and so my daughter has suffered." This elder was the patriarch of the Lanming clan, and doted upon his granddaughter. She was the pearl of the clan, and someone he had always protected. When he heard that several bloody bodyguards of the Lanming clan had appeared by the city gates, he had instantly guessed that the bodyguards that were protecting Laning had been ambushed. In fear for the life of his granddaughter, he had immediately ran for the gates, as if he were on fire. As he consoled his granddaughter, he turned his icy eyes toward the middle-aged man who was in charge of protecting her. "Guard Yin, just what in the world happened on the road? Who would dare cross paths with our Lanming clan?" "Patriarch, we had encountered the Blackwind bandits who had far outmatched our strengths. If it were not for Lord Yang who was passing by in our time of need, then I'm afraid we wouldn't have been able to come back to report to you." Guard Yin spoke with regret. Hearing that, the patriarch of the Lanming clan turned to look at the cross-legged Jian Chun on the carriage, as if to quickly measure him up. Then he cupped his hands together. "I thank little brother for his assistance. My Lanming clan will be sure to reward you." Jian Chun laughed, but returned the polite gesture. "Patriarch is too kind, but your thanks will be unneeded. This one was only there by coincidence. Little brother here has saved the life of my Laning. This is something my Lanming clan will never forget. If you could come by our Lanming clan and be our guest, It would be my greatest honor to receive you. The patriarch spoke earnestly. For a moment, Jianshan hesitated, but in the end he replied with a smile. Then I'll be troubling you for a place to stay. Trouble? It's no trouble at all. The patriarch waved his hand with a merry laugh. At that moment, Guardian pointed at the three firmly wrapped-up bandits and spoke to the patriarch. Patriarch, these three were the ringleaders of the Blackwind bandits. Lord Yang was the one who captured them, and they now await your verdict. The three bandits had their mouths wrapped up so all they could say were muffled cries of forgiveness as they pleaded at the patriarch's feet. The patriarch's eyes grew cold as he ordered, "Take them back first." Traveling to the northeastern part of Thascia City, the group soon reached a large and expansive house that was extraordinarily pretty. Even the decorations added to its beauty as the patriarch led Jianshan to the receiving halls, where they began to talk, while the patriarch slyly tried to figure just what identity he had. Jianshan calmly answered each and every question the patriarch had. But when it came to answers regarding himself, he had naturally answered with what he had told Laniying. Jianshan had even masked his aura, so that the patriarch would be unable to ascertain Jianshan's true strength. However, the guardian had guaranteed that Jianshan was an Earth Saint Master, so the patriarch had been extremely courteous without bearing any tint of arrogance. Then, Jianshan changed the topic by asking, "Patriarch, might you have heard of something called the Space Gate?" "Space Gate? What is that?" The patriarch was confused, clearly not understanding what that was. A look of dejection could be seen on Jianshan's face. His purpose on coming to the Lanming clan was to find news if there was a nearby space gate. Since this place was extremely far away from the Jessan kingdom, he had wanted to travel via space gate to shorten the trip. Otherwise, even if he were to use the illusionary flash, the journey would have been extremely long, and the Saint Force consumption would be unbearably high. Back when he was leaving the Blue Wind Kingdom, the relations between the Jessan kingdom and its neighbors had already been extremely tense. 2 years had passed, and he didn't know what the current state was, or if war had already broke out. Unfortunately, the place he was in right now was too far away to hear news of the Jessan kingdom. After all, the Jessan kingdom was rather small, and the amount of kingdoms within the Tianyuan continent numbered over the hundreds. Even if one were to be extinguished, the rest of the continent would still carry on. That night, Jianshan and the rest of the high-ranking members of the Lanming clan dined on fine delicacies. Right now the Lanming clan was enthusiastically talking to their new guest, while at the same time in a closed-off area, another group of high-ranking members were talking secretly. "Father, I don't find this method appropriate. We don't know anything about the identity of this Yang Yutian, and have only come to know him for a small amount of time, so we have no idea of even his personality. Just how can we so easily betroth Inger to him? We cannot be careless about this." A middle-aged man said. This was Laniying's father. "Patriarch, that man is an Earth Saint Master. While his appearances are rather average, if he was able to reach the Earth Saint Master realm by the age of 30, that means his potential is unlimited. It is possible that he could make the breakthrough to become a Heaven Saint Master soon. In the case that we have the support of a Heaven Saint Master, then our clan would undoubtedly become stronger." Chapter 354. Class 6 Magical Beast Langener. Your way of thinking is far too simple. We don't understand this Yang Yutian at all. If he has a strong background, then this would certainly bode well for our Lanming clan. But you didn't think this through. In the case that this Yang Yutian has offended a terrible enemy, then our Lanmin will be dragged into this situation. Although our Lanming clan is extremely high in position in regards to Thascia City, that is still a small area in comparison to the Tianyuan continent, where we are nothing more than an insect to be stamped on. We simply cannot afford to be caught up in any trouble, so I do not approve of betting on Laniying's happiness for this. Your words have merit. The identity of this Yang Yutian is still unclear. Right now, we are unable to predict whether or not this betrothal will bring fortune or destruction. This is far too risky. Don't think of this situation so pessimistically, as the proverbs say. To find treasure, you must take hold of it from the jaws of trouble. Just how do you expect to catch the cub of a tiger without ever entering the cave? If we do not take this risk, our Lanming clan will forever be holed up within this small Thascia city. This is an opportunity for our clan. Young individuals with a strength like this are rare to see on the continent, but each one of them are unparalleled geniuses with a future like no other. This is the Lanming clan's chance to rise. Several men stood around in a circle, as they each debated about the matter of betrothing Laniying to Jianshen. Some were in favor of this idea, some were not. But each one of them had a logical explanation for their reasons. So even after an entire day, they had not reached a conclusion. That's enough. Everyone please settle down, we are getting nowhere with this. Why don't we listen to the patriarch's words? A man spoke. Immediately, everyone's eyes turned to look at the patriarch of the Lanming clan. The patriarch looked at everyone with an expressionless face for a moment before speaking. Each and every single one of you should think about it for a moment. Do you really think an Earth Saint Master would be that easy to rope in? This youth is a strong individual with a proud air. Although he is undoubtedly not a low-ranking figure, he is also not a person that our small Lanming clan would be able to grab hold of. We don't even know how long he will stay in our Thascia city, but that's enough. We shall talk no more about this. I shall take the matter in my own hands. If you still have enough time to think, then think about what action we shall take toward the Blackwind bandits. To dare move against our precious pearl. If we don't take action against these bandits, I would be ashamed to continue living in Thascia city. Yes, Patriarch. Everyone spoke up at once. The Patriarch's might within the clan was far too high, and when he spoke, not a single one would dare to not listen. The next morning, Jian Chun told some servants of the Lanming clan, before heading out of the clan compound, and walking out onto the streets to roam around the city. Thascia city was a second-class city, so the amount of people walking in and out was quite high. The city streets were filled with richly dressed people, as well as many different burly-looking mercenaries. The scars on the streets were remnants from when the carriages rolled over it, showing what state the city was in. Out of the way! Everyone get out of the way! Suddenly, a group of 20 mercenaries on mounts flew out from behind, and continued to run like the wind, much to the amazement of everyone watching. That has to be the Black Wolf mercenaries. Seeing how much of a hurry they're in, something must have happened to them. A bystander spoke up to the person next to him. Don't you know? Yesterday night, a piece of information could be heard. According to these rumors, a Class 6 magical beast was spotted 500 kilometers away on Thousand Poison Valley. While it's heavily injured, its fighting strength is still stronger than that of a Class 5 magical beast. With the Black Wolf mercenaries running like this, I'm sure it's because they tried to kill it. Whoever could kill a Class 6 magical beast would definitely earn a plentiful profit. The other person spoke. You jest. Saying there's a Class 6 magical beast that's heavily injured. Just where do you get off? The first person cried out in doubt. The mercenary had a helpless look on his face. Despite it being an injured magical beast, it's still quite hard to deal with. With my trifling Saint Master strength, it'd be impossible for me to even run away. I'll sit this situation out, otherwise, I won't live for long. From not too far away, Jian Chen's ears began to prick up at the sound of the topic of the two men. Walking toward them, he spoke. Fellow brothers, is what you say about this Class 6 magical beast true? Of course it's true. I came from that place last night. A large group of people have already gathered there. Practically everyone is a great Saint Master, with just a few Earth Saint Master. Do you think this is false? The second mercenary spoke with a face that made it seem unlikely to be untruthful. At that moment, another hurried cry could be heard from ahead as a group of 30 began to rush to the outsides of the city gates, while on horseback. That must be the Golden Unicorn mercenaries. If you look up front, those are the captain and vice captains. It seems like they're heading for the Thousand Poison Valley. Just as the Golden Unicorn mercenaries rushed out, another group of men eagerly followed. That's one of the strongest clans of Thascia city, the Huanyao clan. Another person cried out in shock. Even the patriarch of the clan is there. He's one of the strongest 3 men in Thascia city. For an Earth Saint Master like him to run out in such a hurry, could something big have happened? Another person spoke out. Not even seconds after the Huanyao clan had left, another group of horseback members flew towards the gate in a hurry. When Jianchen saw these men, he had a shocked look on his face. This was because the person leading up front was the patriarch of the Lanming clan. The moment the Lanming clan were about to run past Jianchen, he walked out to block their path. Just as the Lanming clan were about to cry out in fury, when they saw it was Jianchen that had blocked them, the angry scowls on their faces disappeared in an instant and were replaced with smiles and polite greetings. Even the patriarch had a smile on his face. "Little brother, so you're here?" Patriarch, seeing how much of a hurry you are in, "Did something happen?" Jianchen asked. The patriarch nodded his head. "Correct. Yesterday night we came across some news that a heavily injured Class 6 magical beast appeared at Thousand Poison Valley 500 kilometers away. We're on our way to that area now in fact. Earlier this morning, we had sent someone to invite you over, but there was no sign of you. With little time to spare, we could only have our servants tell you the message when you returned, so that you could catch up with us later. Little brother, are you interested in coming with us to the Thousand Poison Valley?" "So this was the reason?" Jianchen muttered before finally replying to the patriarch's question. Afterward, another person let Jianchen ride his horse before sharing a horse with another person. Without any more words, the group began to travel toward the Thousand Poison Valley, leaving behind a group of confused mercenaries who stared at the receding figure of Jianchen. Just who is that person to have even the patriarch of the Lanming clan be so polite to him? If I had known earlier I would have tried to be friendlier with him. While Jianchen and the Lanming clan continued to travel toward the valley in a mad rush, the patriarch continued to explain to Jianchen all of the information he knew. With Class 3 magical beast mounts, everyone quickly exited the city and continued on the roads with haste. After an hour, they had finally reached the place where they could see a gigantic mountain peak, whose peaks were hidden by the clouds and fog. Each mountain peak was around 4,000 meters tall, and a faint layer of poisonous fog could be seen swirling around. On the outskirts of the valley, a group of 1,000 people were already gathered densely on a flat clearing with tents everywhere. The Lanming clan stopped a little ways away from the clearing before the patriarch handed Jianchen a bottle. "Little brother, this is an antidote to this poison. Although the poison isn't too strong, it will limit our strength. If one spends their time too long here, the effects will show, so we may as well protect ourselves from it." Nodding his head, Jianchen took a pill and then swallowed it as easily as eating a soybean. The Lanming clan had everyone in their group swallow the pill before dismounting. Leaving behind 2 soldiers, everyone began to enter the poisonous valley. Walking into a very dense area, it began to grow hard to differentiate just what direction they were walking in. But because there was a path made for them by the footprints of the ones before, all they had to do was follow this path in a straight line without deviation. The weakest members there were all of the Great Saint Master realm, but their speed was still fast. Not too long after, their group finally reached the apex where they finally stopped in their paths. That was because there was already several hundred men gathered there, with serious looks on their faces. Jianchen leaped nimbly on top of a tree branch and began to look up ahead, only to see an entirely white tiger lazily sitting around with its eyes closed, while protecting the cave behind it. The tiger wasn't too big, only 3 meters long with white fur all over, contradicting the information from the mercenary in Thascia City. Right in front of the tiger was a giant pool of blood, where hundreds of corpses littered the ground with their lifeless poses. Among these bodies was an Earth Saint Master. Chapter 355. The Strong White Tiger. At this scene, Jianchen couldn't help but doubt his eyes. Was this really the injured Class 6 magical beast that was currently as strong as a Class 5 magical beast? No matter how he looked, it did not seem right. Right now, he and the other 100 men anxiously staring at the tiger were all feeling the same amount of doubt. Even if there were 20 Earth Saint Masters, even they would not be able to fight against a Class 6 magical beast. The sight in front of them was a complete contrast with their thoughts. The tiger's fur was still pure white, without a single speck of blood. But all around it were the corpses of hundreds of bodies, including some Earth Saint Masters. To be able to kill that many people without getting itself dirty with blood, this was not something an injured Class 6 magical beast should be able to do. It seems that there's some discrepancies in the information. While this is indeed a Class 6 magical beast, it is not heavily injured at all. Jianshan spoke to himself. A snowy white tiger cub half a meter long could be seen walking out from the cave behind. With an adorably shaggy white fur, the tiger seemed as if it was just born not too long ago, since its eyes weren't even open. Crawling out of the cave seemed to have taken most of its effort, as it tried to continue walking with its trembling forelimbs. The only strange thing about this tiger cub was that there was a pair of wings on its back. This was something a tiger-based magical beast should not have, so this feature was noticed by everyone straight away. Look, that Class 6 magical beast cub, my god, it has wings. Does that mean that this cub could fly later on when they mature? A Class 6 magical beast cub has appeared, how strange. This magical beast cub was just born into the world. If we can take it and bred it now, then it will undoubtedly grow into a loyal steed with a tremendous amount of power. A recently born Class 6 magical beast, how priceless. Seeing the little cub that exited the cave, everyone instantly began to grow excited as flames of enthusiasm sparked in their eyes. Greed overcame them as they looked at the cub, and some of them started to rub their hands in premonition of the wealth to come, as if they were already envisioning the cub in their hands. The excitement from the throngs of men had caused the mother tiger to open both of its eyes slowly. With a powerful roar as if to threaten the group, it raised its head and pulled the cub toward its body with a paw. There was a myriad of emotions in its eyes, such as affection, sadness, pain, and sorrow, but that had gone unnoticed by everyone. Except Jianshan, who was sitting on top of a tree branch, saw it. In that instant, he had clearly seen the grim that was ominous in nature. However, it did not hide the moment of weakness at all, allowing Jianshan to understand just how much in despair the tiger was in. The cub frantically tried to escape from the grasp of its mother, as it tried to poke its head out from the mother's fur. But in the end, the cub continued to be coddled by the mother, as it let out a small crying sound. There was a motherly look in the mother's eyes as it continued to watch over its cub affectionately, as a loving mother would without any malice. Behind the kind-hearted eyes of the mother, there was a flash of pain that was already forcing the tiger to blink away some tears. Everyone behind the tiger mom could only watch the pair of tigers with disbelief. Not a single one of them could believe what they were looking at, since the emotions that this tiger was displaying were far too rich for them to believe that they came from a magical beast. Suddenly, a group of 100 men came running over before forming a line, so that no one could pass through. Then one of them spoke. "Out of the way, everyone out of the way. The Moyin clan has arrived, make way for us." The moment everyone heard of the name Moyin, they instantly grew startled and hastened to make a path for the clan. The group of men from the Moyin clan were all wearing black and flew on by toward the front, without any obstructions. "Elder Bai, take a look, it's the cub of a Class 6 magical beast. Dear heavens, it even has wings." A Moyin clansman spoke out in awe at it. Upon hearing this piece of information, the other middle-aged man next to him had a pleasant smile on his face. The moment he saw the amount of bodies that littered the ground by the tiger, he grew serious once more. "Be careful, this Class 6 magical beast isn't injured at all. Even if it's not as strong after giving birth, we still aren't strong enough to defeat it. Elder Bai, it's the cub of a Class 6 magical beast. Right now, no one is capable of stealing it away from us, but with time, more and more people will come, making it less likely for us to be able to get it for ourselves." "That's right, Elder Bai, if we hurry, then we won't have any opposition. This is our chance. If we wait, then obtaining that cub would be impossible. Elder Bai, we have a dozen Earth Saint Masters and 70 Great Saint Masters. That's more than enough to provide a good chance against this Class 6 magical beast, and to get the cub." A few men spoke to Elder Bai with low voices, as if trying to convince him. At this, the Elder Bai had a thoughtful look as he pondered the situation for a moment before finally saying, Elder Kai, take your Earth Saint Masters to fight the Class 6 magical beast. I will go and retrieve the cub, then in the case that we obtain it, we will retreat immediately. Yes, Elder Bai. The few Earth Saint Masters nodded their heads in excitement. If they could take back the Class 6 magical beast cub, then it would be a tremendous boon to their clan. After their response, they talked for a moment about their plans before the Moyen clan had each one of the Earth Saint Masters take out their saint weapons. Forming a barricade, they ran toward the Class 6 magical beast. Elder Bai stood where he was with a look of concentration as he waited for the first group to attract the tiger's attention before flying toward the cub with an incredible speed. Just as the Moyen clan made their move, the other factions of power leaped into action, as well in participation of vying for the cub. Sensing the intentions of everyone around him, Elder Bai cried out coldly, "If anyone dares to try and ruin this for our Moyen clan, then we will definitely not forgive them. A Class 6 magical beast cub isn't something just anyone can obtain. Everyone should take heed. Is it worth trying to get the cub and incur our wrath?" When the crowd heard Elder Bai's threat, many people began to stop in their tracks and sigh to themselves. In their hearts, they had already given up trying to compete with the Moyen clan for the cub. First of all, they couldn't defend the clan, and secondly, obtaining the magical beast cub was not an easy task. The Moyen clan had over a dozen Earth Saint Masters, and even more Great Saint Masters. This was an amalgamation of power that many were afraid of. Just what type of clan is the Moyen clan for them to be so arrogant? Jian Chun muttered from the treetop. The Moyen clan is the strongest clan in our Skull Kingdom. In terms of influence, it is ranked third in the kingdom, and is reported to have at least 50 Earth Saint Masters within their ranks. Furthermore, there are even 3 Heaven Saint Masters watching over the clan. The patriarch of the Lanming clan spoke to explain it to Jian Chun. 3 Heaven Saint Masters? Haha. This Moyen clan isn't someone that anyone could belittle then. Jian Chun laughed as he turned his head back to watch the events. After his time in Mercenary City, Jian Chun's outlook had been expanded. Mercenary City had the employ of several saint kings and multiple saint rulers, acting as the elders of the city. 3 Heaven Saint Masters were not of anything noteworthy in the eyes of Jian Chun. Seeing just how Jian Chun had downplayed the Moyen clan, the patriarch of the Lanming clan couldn't help but wonder and try to guess at Jian Chun's identity. For him to not even care for a clan with 3 Heaven Saint Masters, just what kind of power was he capable of? Ho! A loud primal roar could be heard as the tiger let out an energy blast from its mouth. The energy blast was like sharp blades of wind that shot toward several Earth Saint Masters in an attempt to cut them down. Several of the Earth Saint Masters didn't have enough time to react to the gust of wind and were promptly speared through the chests. With a miserable howl of pain, they fell to the ground without a sound or any further movements. This sudden change in development caused Elder Bai, who was chasing after the cub, to stop in his tracks as he stared at the several downed Earth Saint Masters in horror. Elder Kai, Bentley Zagar, are you all alright? For a long time, Elder Bai heard no response. That was because not a single Earth Saint Master had gotten back up from the ground. Elder Bai's face instantly paled as he turned his head back to the 3-meter-long tiger with horror. And no, that can't be, the elder muttered. He hadn't thought that a single tiger, even if it were a Class 6 magical beast, would be able to kill a dozen Earth Saint Masters at once. Maybe Great Saint Masters, but not anyone higher. Leaping off of the tree branch he was on, Jian Chun stared at the white tiger with some dejection. So this is a Class 6 magical beast. Just how in the world is this considered weak? Chapter 356. Class 7 Magical Beast. The single explosive roar of the white tiger had killed a dozen Earth Saint Masters, astonishing both Elder Bai from the Moyen clan and even Jian Chun. The other hundreds of spectators had watched this with a growing look of horror at the tiger. Heavens, this tiger is terrifying. In a second, it killed a dozen Earth Saint Masters. Can even a Class 6 magical beast achieve this? There is a large difference between a Class 5 magical beast and a Class 6 magical beast that just cannot be quantified by man. Unless it a Heaven Saint Master or higher, no one can hope to go against a healthy Class 6 magical beast. Impossible. While a Class 5 and Class 6 magical beast are indeed far apart, the difference can't be that big. This must be a Class 6 magical beast without a doubt. Otherwise, a simple roar wouldn't be able to kill several Earth Saint Masters so fast. That's right, this magical beast has to be a Class 6 magical beast at the very most. There's no way for so many Earth Saint Masters to be killed so quickly, especially if they were working together to divert the magical beast's attention. The people watching the fight were all gobsmacked as they continued to talk among each other. Each one were nervously standing around as they looked at the dead Earth Saint Masters, and then the tiger. They were all just great Saint Masters. The realm of the Earth Saint Masters was something they couldn't hope to reach. But even then, an Earth Saint Master was nothing more than a weak entity in the eyes of the white tiger, so there was no hope for them to attack it. To think that there's a peak Class 6 magical beast in front of me. Good heavens, this is an entity that only a peak Heaven Saint Master could hope to fight. A mercenary spoke. The strength of the white tiger had terrified everyone. Although it had already killed 100 people before this, those were not all Earth Saint Masters. This sudden and major development had instantly made all of the great Saint Masters renounce any plans they had of capturing the cub, and many had even decided on retreating. The white tiger's strength was truly too terrifying. Only a Heaven Saint Master would be capable of having an even match with this beast. Elder Bai of the Moyen clan was speechless for a moment, but with the Class 6 magical beast cub right in front of his eyes, he was forced to retreat. Hurry back and report this back to the clan. The elder spoke to another person from his clan. Yes, the person immediately left on his horse. In a flash, 2 days had gone by with more and more people coming to the Thousand Poison Valley. Rumors of the Class 6 magical beast were being quickly spread about, so that clans even stronger than the Moyen clan were starting to show up. Practically every group had brought at least 10 Earth Saint Masters, making the amount of Earth Saint Masters there over 100. It was even said that the Heaven Saint Master ancestor himself had shown up not too long afterward. Evidently, even he was enticed by the allure of a Class 6 magical beast cub. Out of the way, the sect of Dragon and Tiger is here. If everyone could please move out of the way, we are from the Spirit Haven sect. The Baiwa clan is here, move out of the way. We are the mercenaries of the war god. Yield the way. A constant stream of strong factions came one by one to the valley when they had heard about the Class 6 magical beast. Each one was waiting for a chance to arise for their groups of eagerly awaiting Earth Saint Masters. With this pace of development, the Lanming clan had already decided to not get involved. With the patriarch deciding that striving to enter the tiger's cave for the cub was no longer a plan that could work, and cleaned his hands of the affair. Today, the heads of every powerful faction had gathered together in order to discuss the matter of the white tiger. While they were each Earth Saint Masters, and could most likely fight a Class 6 magical beast, they did not want to pay a heavy price for it. Each one knew that fighting one wouldn't be too hard, but defeating it was not the main problem at hand. Let's see it this way. You've all seen the amazing power of the Class 6 magical beast for yourself. It was easily capable of destroying several Earth Saint Masters at once. Why don't we each join together to fight the Class 6 magical beast? Then in the end, we shall all fight for the cub. A middle-aged man from the Baiwa clan spoke. No, that won't do. What would we do if one of us takes advantage of the situation to steal the cub? The captain of the mercenaries of the war god said. Who would dare do such a thing? With so many people within our ranks, we could easily encircle this person. One of the experts of the sect of Dragon and Tiger spoke. Fine, we'll do it this way then, prepare your men. In a flash, the several powers had all reached a conclusion. The only group that wasn't happy was the Moyen clan, since their Heaven Saint Master ancestor was not here yet. If they could only delay for time until he arrived, then they could snatch the cub without anyone hoping to go against them. Unfortunately, every other person knew of this, so they didn't hesitate and went to mobilize their men quickly. Jian Chun had watched the group from the tree branch above. Since the Lanming clan feared accidentally causing trouble, they all moved back. Among this gathering of experts, not a single clan was someone they could bully. The group had already ordered 50 of their Earth Saint Masters to make a circle around the white tiger, and then charge at the final moment when ready. The tiger lazily lay where it was before with its eyes closed, as if uncaring for the situation occurring around it. However, Jian Chun understood the white tiger perfectly well. While the tiger had seemed as if it wasn't weak at all, and was lazing about without fear, Jian Chun had a suspicion that the tiger couldn't stand. In the past 2 days, the tiger hadn't moved at all, as if it had run out of energy. If the tiger truly had any fighting strength, it would have killed every single one of the humans that dared to act against its cub, but it had done nothing at all. This was the most doubtful point, since an act like this was almost contradictory to a magical beast's instincts. "Human, help my child." At this moment, the weak sound of a voice entered Jian Chun's ears. This sudden sound had caused Jian Chun to jump up with a quivering motion before falling down from the tree branch. Looking around himself vigilantly, Jian Chun saw no one around him. Jian Chun's heart skipped erratically as he flew down to the ground. He hadn't sensed anything nearby him, so when he heard someone's voice near his ear, he had been shocked beyond his wits. "Human, I beg of you to save my child." At the same time, the same voice could be heard within Jian Chun's eardrums. The voice carried a pleading yet weak voice, as if it was without energy. Quivering for a moment, Jian Chun quickly brushed off the shock to calm himself down before realizing the sound was coming from up ahead. What was more unbelievable was that it was coming from the tiger. "Who are you?" Jian Chun's lips had barely split apart, but he was sure that the owner of the voice would be able to hear him. "I am called Rum Guinness, the magical beast right in front of you." The weak voice spoke. From the voice, Jian Chun could detect a feminine tone to it, but it was still very weak nonetheless. Hearing this, Jian Chun was shocked down to his core. He never would have thought that the voice he was hearing belonged to a magical beast. It was as if there was no distinction at all between a magical beast and a human. But Jian Chun had no idea just how he could understand. Suddenly, a thought flashed through his mind as Jian Chun's face grew stunned. Could you be a Class 7 magical beast, and not a Class 6 magical beast? Back in Kargath Academy, Jian Chun had read many books about magical beasts. He knew that Class 7 magical beasts could transform into a humanoid shape and speak the human tongue without any distinction. "According to what you humans classify us as, I am indeed a Class 7 magical beast." The tiger's weak voice rang out once more, as if it was whispering something private to Jian Chun, so that only the two of them could hear. "A Class 7 magical beast, that's the equivalent to a saint ruler in the human realm." Jian Chun was in shock as his heart went into chaos. He just couldn't believe that this tiger that was blocking the cave behind it for 2 days was in fact a Class 7 magical beast. If news of how this was a Class 7 magical beast were to be spread out, then everyone would have run away. In the face of such a tiger, just who would dare try to steal the cub? "Human, I beg you, help my child." The tiger's voice could be heard once more with a begging tone. Quickly reining in his shock, Jian Chun forced a smile on his face as he thought out loud to himself. "You Class 7 magical beast ask of something impossible. I am but a mere Earth Saint Master. Just how could I help you? With so many people here, you could ask any one of them. Human, from everyone here, I can only trust you. The rest are unreliable. Would you help my child?" The tiger asked once more. "You don't even know me. Just why do you think I am the most trustable person here?" Jian Chun was amazed at the sloppiness of this tiger's reasoning. Intuition. We beasts have a keen sense of instinct. Without it, we would not be able to sense any other being stronger than us. My instinct does not lead me wrong. It tells me that among all humans here, the only one that I can trust is the one that will be able to protect my child from the rest. Human, will you help my child? Chapter 357. Winged Tiger God. Jian Chun couldn't help but feel awkward a little. He knew that this wouldn't be an easy assignment. Thinking for a moment, Jian Chun spoke. "Could you tell me just what problems you have, and how I should help you?" At that moment, The sounds of yelling could be heard as the amalgamation of power suddenly charged toward the tiger with all 50 Earth Saint Masters. Ho! The tiger's eyes gained a dangerous gleam, before turning its head to the skies, and roaring so loudly that the entire valley shook. All those within the valley couldn't help but shiver with dread, as they began to fear for their lives. The tiger, who hadn't climbed up for 2 days, suddenly shot straight up. With a furious, bloodthirsty glare, it leaped into the group of fighters. The tiger wasn't gigantic in scale. It was only 3 meters tall, but it had a terrifying amount of strength. With the tiger among the humans, it was like a wolf among lambs. With a single swipe, it caused a massacre since no one was able to evade its claws. Anyone that was hit by the claws naturally perished to them, and not a single person was able to strike it successfully. In a short 10 breaths, each and every single one of the 50 Earth Saint Masters from each faction had been eradicated. Not a single one was left, and no matter where the tiger turned, there was no one left to see. After killing all 50 Earth Saint Masters, the tiger glared dangerously at the leaders of the factions, causing everyone to flinch back in fear. Instead of advancing to kill off the rest, the tiger slowly turned around toward the cave, but the weakness in its eyes grew more and more clear. Slowly laying back down on the ground, the tiger lay its head on the ground and closed its eyes again. The leaders of the powers all looked at the white tiger with an equally white face. Unable to say anything for a very long time, they couldn't help but just stand there in utter shock. This is a magical beast that's far stronger than even a peak class 6 magical beast. At last, one of the leaders spoke with a trembling voice in complete and utter shock. We're no match for it. What should we do? Even if we were to fight now with just us leaders, we wouldn't be an opponent. Another spoke. This is wrong. That magical beast is abnormal. With so much strength, why didn't it kill even us? For the sake protecting its child, this is abnormal behavior. That's right, this is far too strange. Take a look at that magical beast. Just why is it so listless? It's even napping with its eyes closed. The rumors said that it was severely weak due to the wounds it has. Is that why it didn't fight all of us? After the shock of the recent massacre, everyone began to talk among themselves. A magical beast's protection of its cub was absolute, and would definitely not let go of any human that would dare try to steal it away. Anyone that would try would face the wrath of the magical beast, so this white tiger's actions were a tad queer. At that moment, the tiger's voice came into Jian Chen's mind once again. Human, I cannot hold on for much longer. I beg of you to promise me that you will bring my child away from here. You are the only one among this crowd that I can trust. I do not wish for my child to be left in the hands of any other. Right now the tiger's voice was even weaker than before. Hearing this, Jian Chen's eyebrows furrowed before nodding his head. Fine, I promise to take care of your child. Human, I cannot thank you enough. My intuition tells me that entrusting my child to you is the most sensible path. I can also sense that whatever danger my child comes across in the future, you will be able to help him. Is that right? The white tiger spoke happily. Correct. Jian Chen nodded without hesitation. Human, I, Rum Guinness, am truly grateful to you. Although this will add on to your troubles, I have no other solutions. Enter the cave, and I will explain some things to you. The tiger spoke. Without hesitation, he flew out past the crowd, and into the cave behind the tiger like a bolt of lightning. Fuck, who's that? Are they trying to die? That guy doesn't wish to live anymore. Not a single one of the group had tried to block Jian Chen, and instead looked at him go toward the white tiger, as if he was an idiot. However, much to everyone's complete and utter shock, Jian Chen managed to slide into the cave without any problems before disappearing from sight. The white tiger in front of the cave seemed to have completely disregarded Jian Chen, as if it didn't even sense him. Is the tiger asleep or something? Plenty of men began to shift around uneasily, as they all thought with jealousy about how easily Jian Chen had managed to slip in. Most of the men, in fact, had been tempted to follow in his footsteps. Then, 2 figures came bursting out of the crowd and flew for the cave behind the tiger with a speed comparable to Jian Chen's. This was all for the sake of the tiger cub inside the cave. Ho! Suddenly, The white tiger that had been motionless until now let out a ferocious roar as it swiped its claws. In an instant, the two figures had been cut in half in midair and fell to the floor in a rain of blood and gore. The two had been Earth Saint Masters, but they were easily killed as well. At the same time, this had also shut down any notions that anyone had about following Jian Shen. After killing the two, the white tiger glared dangerously at the rest before slowly walking into the dark cave, disappearing from sight. The tiger's actions left everyone completely puzzled on why the tiger had left the first person that entered the cave untouched. Within the cave, a single night pearl hung overhead, illuminating the cave with some light. All around the cave was dark shadows, and in the corner of a cave, the tiny tiger cub was curled up sleeping. This sight was rather cute, but the wings on its back made it seem anything but normal. The white tiger slowly walked into the cave and looked affectionately at the tiger cub. Then, its entire body took on the shape of a middle-aged woman before Jian Shen's amazed eyes. The woman was rather tall at 2 meters in height, which was taller than Jian Shen by a head. Even her physique could comparable to Qin Zhao's. Jian Shen stared at this previously tiger-shaped woman in a daze. Although he knew that a Class 7 magical beast could transform into a human, this was still the very first time he had seen such an event. This was quite mystical, almost far too mystical for anyone to believe. If he were to see this sight in his previous life, he would have called this woman an evil spirit. An evil spirit that could cultivate and was a tiger. When Jian Shen came to this world, he knew that it was far different than the world he used to live in. The average lifespan for a person here was around 200 years old. An Earth Saint Master could live up to 500 years old, and a Heaven Saint Master could live up to 1,000 years old. Back in his old world, even the experts that stood on top of the world could only live up to 100 years old. Duguqiu by himself was the only being that had been able to live to be 200 years old. The newly changed woman embraced the cub affectionately before turning to look at Jian Shen. "Human, I thank you for looking after my child. Your kindness is something that I, Rum Guinness, will never be able to return." That is, would you tell me what trouble you came across? I can see that you are extremely weak. Could you be at the end of your lifespan? Jian Shen didn't know what to ask. He still found it hard to believe this motherly-like woman was actually the ferocious white tiger from before. With a sorrowful sigh, the woman spoke. "Human, I shall not hide anything from you. Allow me to explain everything in detail. I can only hope that you will not abandon my child after listening. You needn't worry, Jian Shen. Do not go back on my word after it is given. I am not one that breaks their word." Jian Shen pledged. The woman's eyes grew bright as she looked at Jian Shen. The weakness in her eyes could still be seen. "I believe you. My intuition tells me that you are not a human of deception." The woman went silent for a moment, as if she was remembering painful memories. On Cross Mountain, there lies a magical beast clan that commanded the entirety of the mountain with high-ranking magical beasts. This clan was called the Gilligan clan. Within the Gilligan clan, there are two kings that are separated between the land-based magical beasts and the sky-based magical beasts. Those of the tiger-based magical beasts and the rock-based magical beasts are considered royalty within the Gilligan clan. That is because the king of the land magical beasts was a golden fur tiger king, and the king of the sky magical beasts was the legendary rock. As for I was a high-ranking elder of the Gilligan clan. The father of this child was a golden fur tiger king, who was the younger brother of the current king of the land magical beasts. Another Class 7 magical beast as you would. The father and I loved each other for over 100 years, but it was not until 22 years ago that I grew pregnant. Maturing for 20 years, it wasn't until 2 years after that, much to the delight of the father and I had given birth to the race of the ancient emperor of tiger-based magical beasts, the winged tiger god. Chapter 358. Saving the white tiger. The moment she spoke of the winged tiger god, Rum Guinness began to feel emotional. A winged tiger god is the king of the tiger-type magical beasts. They hold supreme status among us tiger-type magical beasts, and are also a god of magical beasts. It was only because of a winged tiger god that all magical beasts were unified as one in the best. Leading us magical beasts over the oceans after being driven out by the Bai clan, we finally came to occupy this continent. When the father and I heard that our child was a winged tiger god, the two of us were happy beyond belief. Unable to contain his excitement, the father went off to tell the good news to his elder brother. However, the nightmare began at that point. We never would have thought that the elder brother would suddenly have evil thoughts invade his mind. He was afraid that the winged tiger god would soon be a threat to his power, and thus he tried to kill our child. For the sake of our child, the father and I both left the Gilligan clan, but the king had no intentions on letting us go. While keeping the matter of there being a winged tiger god a secret, he had come after us in person. My husband and I together were no match for him, and had sustained heavy injuries as a result. However, in the final moments, my husband sacrificed himself to allow our child and I to escape. Right now, I can no longer feel the chi of my husband. He has already succumbed to the schemes of his elder brother. As she told her tale, Rumgina's face revealed a sorrowful look as tears flowed from her eyes. Taking my child and running away from the Cross Mountains, I came to this place. Perhaps it was divine providence, or the heavens wished that no harm should befall my child. But thanks to whichever supernatural event, I was able to come across a dependable human after half a year before I reached the end of my lifespan. Perhaps your coming was what the heavens have decreed. The end of your lifespan. Could you be injured beyond any sort of healing? Jianshan asked. With a grieved look, Rumgina spoke. Correct. Back when the king of the Gilligan clan was fighting me, a pure dark energy was forced into my body. These days, there is nothing I can do while it ransacks my insides. This dark energy is from the king himself, and I found no way for me to find a way to stop it. All I can do now is to slowly watch my body be engulfed by this energy. If it were not for the superior advantage magical beasts have in their body strength, I would have died long ago. Right now, I only have 3 days at most. Jianshan couldn't help but feel shocked as he listened to Rumgina. Then is there no other way to eliminate the dark energy within you? Rumgina shook her head. There is none. The king of the Gilligan clan used his own energy to strike at me with the dark energy. Not only is it strong, but it has permeated my entire body and has destroyed any chance of me living. Even if the dark energy was purified, with my current injuries, I would not have much longer to live. Then what if there was a radiant saint master? Would that help you recover? Jianshan stared at Rumgina with a focused gaze. Shaking her head lightly once again, Rumgina spoke. This dark energy is not something that a normal radiant saint master could purify. If there was a chance, a 7th-class radiant saint master would be needed, but those are as rare as the feathers of a phoenix wing, and not someone I could come across easily in the short amount of time I have left. Even if I could find one, they would not be able to heal me so easily. You do not understand the relationship between the Gilligan clan with you humans. There would be no way for them to assist me. Why not let me try to see if I could help? Jianshan spoke seriously to Rumgina. It is no use, human. You are merely wasting your energy. My time is not long here. You would best take my child and leave from this place. I will use the very last of my energy to help you get away from anyone and secure your safety while fleeing from this area. Rumgina spoke calmly with preparations of leaving this world. With that, she looked off in a distance with an unfocused gaze. Husband, you will not be alone for much longer. I will be coming soon. Let us watch over our child from the next world. Together. Rumgina's expression caused Jianshan to feel some grievance as well, but he spoke no words. Slowly closing his eyes, he began to control the radiant saint force in the world. Although he knew that he could not cure Rumgina's injuries, he could at least give it a try. A milky white glow of light could be seen forming in between Jianshan's hands. With time, it quickly began to glow even more dazzling with a gentle but strong light that was comforting to look at. The rays of light that could be felt from this ball of light would make anyone feel happy. Rumgina grew startled as the grieved expression was squashed. Staring at Jianshan, she spoke with shock. You're a radiant saint master? Just how? Rumgina had been wholly astounded by this sight. Jianchen knew that the dark energy within Rum Guinness was far too strong, so he had spared no effort in trying to condense the radiant saint force. Because of that, he wasn't able to clearly hear what Rum Guinness had said. In another moment, the radiant saint force had reached the best Jianchen could manage. Extending his arms, the radiant saint force ball slowly began to float toward Rum Guinness before engulfing her. Rum Guinness instantly grew shocked as the radiant saint force made its way inside her body. But after a moment, she shook her head with a sigh. No, your radiant saint force is too weak. It's not enough to purify the dark energy left inside my body. At the very most, it can only delay it. With a light in his eyes, Jianchen asked, how much longer will it be contained for? Rum Guinness went silent for a moment as she tried to estimate before finally saying, the radiant saint force is like the nemesis of the dark energy. If I can continue to gain enough radiant saint force and incorporate it into my body, then I can temporarily seal away the dark energy. However, in this time, I must focus entirely on trying to seal the energy and cannot move against any human. Hearing this, Jianchen felt some relief in his heart. He could not let this saint ruler like magical beast die here. Mustering up some emotions, he spoke. Then how about this? I shall supply you with saint force, and you will try to seal away the dark energy within your body? A flicker of surprise crossed Rum Guinness' eyes before quickly growing calm once again. No, if that is done, then I will not be able to use my energy to fight any human. With so many humans out there, you alone will not be enough to fight them all. Although you have hidden your presence, I can sense that your strength is not enough to deal with everyone out there. I can also sense that a Heaven Saint Master human is on his way here. He won't take long to get here. I must ensure that I kill him. The moment he heard that a Heaven Saint Master was on the way, Jianchen's face changed slightly. Although the white tiger in front of him could kill a Heaven Saint Master, her life would take a turn for the worse. With each movement she made, she would only harm herself even more. If she continued to exhaust her energy by fighting, then she wouldn't have enough to seal the dark energy later on. You needn't worry. I can deal with the men outside. I've also the ability to shake off any Heaven Saint Master after me. Right now you should use my Radiant Saint Force in order to seal the dark energy within your body. Jianchen spoke staunchly before forming even more Radiant Saint Force for Rum Guinness to use to heal. Human, why do you help me to this extent? I have already entrusted my child to you with no other wish. Right now I only wish to join my husband in the next world. He is alone there. Rum Guinness' eyes had tears in them as a small guttural sound could be heard from her throat. You are a mother. That means you should take responsibility over your own child. Could it be that you wish for your child to grow without a mother or father? Do you not know the pain this would inflict on your child? This is something that cannot be fixed by any means. Thus, I will do all that I can to help you for the sake of your child. Or do you not wish to take revenge for your husband? Could it be that even after your husband was mercilessly killed by his elder brother, you will do nothing but to take it in silence? Or will you throw all your hopes of revenge onto your child to bear? Are you a mother or not? You are not thinking about your child. Jianchen spoke passionately. By the time he reached the end of his rant, he had already began to growl slightly. He did not wish for Rum Guinness to die at all. That was because after listening to her tale, Jianchen's emotions had been affected, so that he sympathized with her. Another reason Jianchen had for her survival was that he truly did not wish for a being that could rival a saint ruler to die. Rum Guinness grew speechless at Jianchen's speech. With only the slightest of cries, Rum Guinness' determination on dying here had been ultimately shaken by his words. Sucking in a deep breath, Jianchen said once more, we must take the time to quickly seal off the dark energy within your body. No matter what, you must live for the sake of your child. Chapter 359. Leaked Identity. Rum Guinness nodded her head in anguish before crying. I shall listen to you. For the sake of my child I will live on. I will not allow such an arduous task to fall upon my child. I will definitely take revenge for my husband, and look after my child grow old. Seeing Rum Guinness have a new resolve over her life, Jianchen let out a sigh in relief. He had managed to rescue a saint ruler being potentially. The dark energy has already entered my bone marrow. The radiant saint force is coincidentally the bane of it, so you will be able to force out the dark energy with it. Allow me to deal with the next step. Rum Guinness spoke calmly towards Jianshan afterwards. Rum Guinness and Jianshan spent 2 hours on trying to use the radiant saint force to seal away the dark energy within her body. At the same time, the radiant saint force would sometimes fail to make any progress, since while the radiant saint force was effective against the dark energy, it was still too weak. Not too long after, however, Rum Guinness had lost her ability to fight as a Class 7 magical beast, since she couldn't use the energy within her now. She would have to fight using only her own physical strength, but that would be far less than before. An hour later, Jianshan had finally managed to allow some of the injuries on Rum Guinness' body recover, before preparing to take Rum Guinness out and away from here. Human, I can no longer use my strength to protect my child. You should take him instead. Tears formed in Rum Guinness' eyes, reluctant to part from her child just yet. Jianshan looked at the still sleeping cub and nodded solemnly. You needn't worry. I will do my best for your child, and when I can reach the 7th class Radiant Saint Master level, I will clear away the dark energy within you. Emotionally, Rum Guinness looked at Jianshan. Human, I can sense that you mean what you say. You truly care for this mother and child. This kindness of yours is something I will never forget. One more thing. Since my child is a winged tiger god, his growth rate will be rather slow. Swallowing valuable resources will allow his growth to accelerate, and when he grows up, he will have the ability to find them for himself. After explaining several more things of importance, Rum Guinness had made sure to remind Jianshan that news of her cub being a winged tiger god must not be revealed. Carefully remembering every single detail given to him, Jianshan spoke. I know what to do, but we should leave now. The longer we idle here, the more variables there will be. With that, Jianshan spent no more time, and held the tiger in his left hand with a bundle of clothes covering its body. Then with a leap, he flew outside in an attempt to escape. He has the Class 6 cub, don't let him escape. Unfortunately, there had been a sharp-eyed person who had immediately guessed what the bundle of clothes was. In an instant, everyone had burst into motion. The remaining 50 Earth Saint Masters flew forward to block Jianshan's path. A fierce killing intent appeared in Jianshan's eyes, as he instantly materialized the light wind sword into his hand with a glow of azure and violet to the sword. Seeing only the flash of a sword and the impeccable speed of Jianshan, the 3 Earth Saint Masters who were blocking him were brought down in an instant. The surrounding people had already been seduced by the Class 6 cub. Each one of them could only stare at the bulging bag that Jianshan had. While they couldn't see what was inside at this point, that wasn't necessary. Jianshan had been able to enter the cave without being obstructed by the white tiger. Then, the white tiger had went into the cave for a long amount of time, without any sounds of battle being heard. This made everyone believe there had to be some sort of relationship between the white tiger and Jianshan. When they saw Jianshan dash out of the cave, it didn't take a genius to know that Jianshan was taking the Class 6 cub with him. Jianshan's instant takedown of 3 Earth Saint Masters hadn't made anyone afraid. The remaining group of Earth Saint Masters had already resolved to block him and encircle around him with their saint weapons. Fending off the attacks with his sword, Jianshan's eyes grew even more fierce as the azure and violet glows of light increased in intensity as well. The sword began to blur in the air as it filled the area with its mirror images, ready to make a bloody pathway for him to escape. By now, Jianshan was already a 4th cycle Earth Saint Master, with even more strength than before. With the help of the sword spirits, he was like a wolf within a flock of sheep. No one would be able to block him. The cub's with him. We must stop him or else the cub will get away. All great Saint Masters retreat. Earth Saint Masters, form a circle around him. Even if he is an Azura, we must not allow him to get away. At the commands of the higher-ranking members, all of the great Saint Masters drew back while the Earth Saint Masters flew forward. In a flash, Jianshan was completely surrounded by Earth Saint Masters. There were around 10 of them that were also blocking Jianshan's path. Stand in my path and perish. Jianchen barked out loud as he advanced. His left hand held the cub entrusted to him by Rum Guinness, and his right hand held the light wind sword. In an instant, the azure and violet light on his sword was thrust in 10 different motions toward the ones that blocked his path. By the time Jianchen had swung his sword, very few could see that he had moved, while the rest couldn't even react before the sword stabbed through their throats. For those that had brought up their saint weapons to block his sword, the light wind sword had already stabbed straight through it and forced them to fall back with blood leaking out from their throats. In a single instant, the 10 Earth Saint Masters that went up to block Jianchen had instantly crumbled. In the next moment, 10 more Earth Saint Masters came forward with their saint weapons ready to chop and block Jianchen's escape path. With a sneer, Jianchen activated the Heaven's Stolen Fortune and increased his strength 3 times over. His sword flickered and blurred mid-swing as a series of metallic clangs could be heard when Jianchen blocked sword after sword. But each time his light wind sword clashed with one of the swords instantly broke apart to reveal jagged edges. With the saint weapons damaged, the owners instantly spat out a mouthful of blood before gasping in shock. A few of the men had stopped when they saw the azure and violet glow. In an instant they cried out, "His saint weapon has an azure and violet glow, crap. It's Jianchen, the first-place ranker of the gathering of the mercenaries." Like a stone that caused thousands of ripples, everyone instantly looked at Jianchen in shock and disbelief. While this was thousands of miles away from Mercenary City, it was still relatively close for people to know of Jianchen's name. He was a figure whose name was like a thunderclap, and after becoming the king of mercenaries, countless of people knew of his name. Thus, people came to know that his saint weapon carried an azure and violet glow to it, and could easily break the saint weapon of a great saint master. By now, the azure and violet sword qi was Jianchen's symbol, since no other person on the Tianyuan continent controlled such glows. In fact, no one had ever even heard of such an energy before. What had caused even more shock, however, was the fact that it was the king of mercenaries that had snatched the Class 6 cub. This result was enough to cause everyone to be shocked and not knowing what to do. Every single king of mercenaries would at the very least become a Heaven Saint Master or higher. This was not someone they could afford to offend. Once Jianchen's name had been announced, everyone began to argue louder and louder on what to do. In a moment, practically everyone in the Thousand Poison Valley knew that the king of mercenaries, Jianchen, was here. Jianchen's eyes narrowed as he listened to his identity get announced to the world. There was no way for the Jetta clan and Sher family back in Mercenary City to not know about this. The amount of people here were far too many. Jianchen had counted around 1,000. There would be no way for him to realistically deal with them all. Without any more hesitation, Jianchen flew forward while everyone was stunned in an attempt to escape. "Quick, after him. It doesn't matter who he is, but he has the cub." One of the commanders called out. "Stop him, don't let him run away. We have so many men. We must take that Class 6 cub." The Class 6 cub was something that everyone desperately wanted, so the major powers had decided to overlook Jianchen's identity. This Class 6 cub was far too precious to give up. The Earth Saint Masters hesitated for a moment before biting their lips in frustration and running after him. They all knew that Jianchen was strong and did not wish to be his enemy, but they had no choice but to obey the order. After running away for some time, Jianchen had made use of the illusionary flash to increase his speed, so that his pursuers could only watch Jianchen grow further and further away. The heads of the powers could only look on helplessly as they had some men carefully enter the cave. Unfortunately, the cave was empty. There was no Class 6 cub, or even the mother. Chapter 360. Fighting a Heaven Saint Master within the Thousand Valley. Jianchen had used the illusionary flash, so he could come to the predetermined place where he and Rum Guinness had spoke of. Not too long after he had arrived, a white figure had leaped into the area with a speed that was barely slower than the illusionary flash. In a short moment, the white figure came to a stop before Jianchen's eyes, before turning into the white tiger, Rum Guinness. Rum Guinness looked at Jian Chen holding her cub with a reluctant look as from before. With another sigh, she spoke, "Your strength still astounds me. Even with many people there, no person was able to stop you. I've heard from the other humans that you are called Jianshen, correct?" My name is indeed Jianshen," Jianshen replied. "Then I will call you Jianshen from here on out. Jianshen, I can no longer use my inner energy to fight, and will have to rely upon my physical strength. I cannot even assist you since the Gilligan clan will surely find me if I cause too much of a disturbance. The next few days will require me to hide away. Thus, I must implore you to look after my child once again." Rum Guinness spoke this time in a human voice, but because of her true tiger form, the voice sounded neither like a man nor a woman. Jianshen nodded his head seriously. "Be at peace. I will definitely look after your child. Wait until I have the ability to cure you of your dark energy." Then, Jianshen had another thought. How should I come and find you later? Revealing a tuft of tiger hair, she dripped some blood on it, dyeing it completely red. Handing it over to Jianshen, she spoke. "If you wish to find me, then have my child drip his own blood on this. It will guide you to me." Jianshen carefully took the piece of fur into his hands. "Jianshen, the items you use to disguise yourself may protect yourself from a heaven saint master, but it will do no good to those of the saint ruler realm, or class 7 magical beasts. You would do well to be careful." The tiger spoke. Hearing that, Jianshen held up a hand to touch his face with a bitter smile. His disguise had been perfect, and had allowed him to travel anywhere with ease. He hadn't thought that saint rulers would be able to ignore this completely. With a final look toward her cub, and a few words to Jianshen, Rum Guinness disappeared. Woo woo woo! The cub that Jianshen was holding suddenly opened its eyes as it began to cry out loud. Unable to detect whether it was because of the pain of having the mother leave him, or the goodbye itself, the cub began to struggle as it tried to stand up on its own power. Jianshen gently caressed the cub's head, as if to soothe the cub into safety, while showing a kind expression on his face. Jianshen had no desire to stay here any longer. The valley was no longer safe for him to stay, therefore the only choice was to quickly leave the area. Leaping up into the trees, Jianshen began to borrow the tree branches to get farther and farther away. Right behind Jianshen, the group of men in front of the cave could only shake their heads in regret and disappointment. A class 6 magical beast had been right in front of them, but it had been taken away by the gathering of the mercenaries' winner, Jianshen. This was something they still could not accept. Suddenly, the strong qi of a person could be felt from far away, as someone with unbelievable strength arrived right in front of the cave. In a flash, the sound of wind suddenly stopping could be heard as a crane-haired elder appeared in midair. Floating, the elder looked down on everyone with his sharp eyes without any feelings in them, as if he was a king over the mass. "It's in heaven, Saint Master." The group went into an uproar as everyone began to feel the giant pressure radiating from the heaven Saint Master. Everyone could only look up with both fear and respect reflected in their eyes at the elder. Seeing the elder, the Moyin clansmen were all overjoyed as the leader spoke out. "Bai Yuanjing greets our ancestor." "We greet our ancestor." The Moyin clansmen all followed Elder Bai's example and knelt down with a reverent pose. The Heaven Saint Master took a look around before speaking calmly. "Where is the Class 6 cub?" "Honored ancestor, the Class 6 cub was taken away from us." Elder Bai spoke with concern toward the Heaven Saint Master expert that was floating right in front of him. Hearing this, a flash appeared in the elder's eyes. "Do you know which faction took it?" "Ancestor, the one who took the Class 6 cub is the king of mercenaries, Jianshen. His strength was far too much for any one of us to stop him." Elder Bai spoke. "Jianshen, so it was him." The ancestor of the Moyin clan furrowed his eyebrows in hesitation before a dangerous glint appeared. "Which way did Jianshen go?" "That way." Elder Bai pointed off in the direction. Right now he could only hope that his ancestor would be able to catch up to Jianshen and claim the Class 6 cub for their own clan. The ancestor immediately flew off in the direction pointed out to him and quickly went out of sight. "Quickly, report this back to the sect. We can only rely on the sect elders to help us. Hurry up and hire some men to come over. Report this to the patriarch straight away." The Heaven Saint Master from the Moyen clan caused an annoyance to the other powers, who quickly tried to report back to their own factions. At this moment, Jian Chun was using the illusionary flash to transverse across the valley. His path was not in a linear direction, and had oftentimes changed directions to throw off anyone chasing him. 2 hours later, Jian Chun had traveled several hundred kilometers. Stopping by the side of a valley, Jian Chun stopped for a moment to regain his energy. With the cub sleeping by his feet, Jian Chun began to recover his saint force. With the large battle, and his use of his illusionary flash, Jian Chun had already used up 2/3 of his saint force. With his identity revealed, and a Heaven Saint Master most likely after him, Jian Chun would need to conserve all of the strength he could to fight a Heaven Saint Master. The dog-sized tiger cub obediently lay by Jian Chun's leg with a slumbering snore. His white wings were folded against his fur in a way that made them quite hard to see without looking for them. Jian Chun sat in a cross-legged position with the sword spirits, trying to rapidly absorb the energy within the monster cores to help Jian Chun recover. Under the disguise of the weeds, he was especially hidden from sight. For hours later, a boom could be heard as a gray-robed man suddenly flew overhead Jian Chun, and then out of sight. Jian Chun could sense the figure fly by overhead, while he was recovering his saint force with a nervous expression. He is truly fast. This must be the Heaven Saint Master from the Moyen clan. I didn't think that even after changing my direction so many times, he would be able to catch up with me. It's a good thing I am hidden. However, Jian Chun's face changed as he thought. Not good, I'm sure I am already found then. Jian Chun immediately leaped out from the weeds, and used the illusionary flash to take him and the tiger cub away. He had been recovering using the energy from the monster cores when the Heaven Saint Master appeared. With such a short distance, there was no way for such a high-level expert to miss the ripples of energy coming from the monster cores. Sure enough, just as Jian Chun left, the Heaven Saint Master suddenly turned around and discovered Jian Chun running away. With a renewed burst of energy, the Heaven Saint Master chased after him. Using the illusionary flash, Jian Chun was quickly traveling through the Thousand Poison Valley. Since the terrain was complicated and the ground uneven, the true power of the illusionary flash could not be revealed, and he was unable to shake off the rapidly catching up Heaven Saint Master. Seeing the Heaven Saint Master get closer and closer, Jian Chun gained a fierce look in his eyes as he suddenly stopped in his tracks. Holding the still sleeping tiger cub in his left hand, he flew at the Heaven Saint Master and brought out his light wind sword in his right hand with the azure and violet glow shining on it. In these 4 hours, Jian Chun had recovered about 80% of his saint force. Now that he couldn't escape, it was better to put his all into the fight. Plus, he had never fought against a Heaven Saint Master before, so he could use this chance to test just how long he could last against one. The Heaven Saint Master was about 30 meters away from Jian Chun and floated above him. Staring down onto Jian Chun, he looked at the tiger cub in his left hand and spoke with a slightly happy expression. Jian Chun, I don't wish to be enemies with you. My Moyen clan is in need of that Class 6 cub, so I must ask you to resign with parting yourself from the cub. My Moyen clan will definitely reward you with a handsome prize, and help you unconditionally within our scope of power. Chapter 361. Fierce Battle. Jian Chun didn't hesitate to decline the offer. My apologies, but I am protecting this white tiger. As long as I, Jian Chun, am alive, I will not allow anyone to lay a hand on him. Jian Chun, why would you go through such trouble? A magical beast usually has an exceptionally slow mature rate. A Class 6 magical beast could take at the very fastest 10 years, or 100 years at its slowest to mature. Then if we were to include the countless resources, it would be an extravagant cost. With your talent, it would take another 10 or so years for you to become a saint ruler, I'm sure. By then, you could tame another docile Class 6 magical beast, without having to go through the costs of raising one yourself, while avoiding any trouble with our Moyen clan. The Heaven Saint Master clearly did not wish to be enemies with Jian Chun, and was hoping that Jian Chun would take the initiative to give up. That was because every single king of mercenaries have always been a heaven saint master at the very least, and a saint ruler for the vast majority, meaning that Jianshen was someone they couldn't afford to offend later. I, Jianshen, am not a man who goes back on his words. You might as well give up on those thoughts. I will take this cub away from anyone else. Jianshen's eyes grew cold as he prepared to fight without fear of the heaven saint master. The ancestor of the Moyan clan gave a small sigh as he spoke. Jianshen, the Class 6 cub is something my Moyan clan desires. If you wish to continue on with this charade, then you will be offending our Moyan clan. The fierce glow in Jianshen's eyes grew colder and colder, before they seemed to have intensified into a sharp amount of qi toward the elder. If you dare make a move, then consider your Moyan clan dead to me. There will be no compromise. I will annihilate your Moyan clan. With that, the ancestor's face grew startled for a moment before he too glared back at Jianshen. Jianshen, you aren't thinking about what you are saying. Although you are talented, but even with your strength, you do not have the qualifications to say such words to me. If you don't believe me, then feel free to see for yourself. All you have to do is make a move, and your Moyan clan will be enemies with me until death. If you do not wish to see your Moyan clan come across any trouble, then take a step back. Jianshen will naturally do nothing in that case. Jianshen's stare was as sharp as his sword, and his words left room for no doubt. The Moyan clan's ancestor grew dark at the very thought of a tiny Earth Saint Master threatening him. Despite being an extremely talented one, he was still not someone that he could consider an opponent. There was a clear divide between an Earth Saint Master and a Heaven Saint Master, almost as different as the heavens and earth themselves. He had previously been polite with Jianshen due to his fear of Jianshen's talent, and wished to be on good relations with him in hopes that they could one day be friends with the saint ruler. But with these threatening words, the ancestor could not have those thoughts any longer. He was a Heaven Saint Master with an illustrious status. On the Tianyuan continent, saint rulers were existences that even Earth Saint Masters would have no choice but to be extremely respectful to, unlike Jianshen, who had decided to give no face toward a Heaven Saint Master. Not only had Jianshen's attitude failed to cower to the ancestor, but it had instead infuriated him. With a thunderous expression he spoke. What an audacious brat. A Class 6 cub is something our Moyan clan needs. If you do not wish to hand it over, then I will personally come and retrieve it. With that, the ancestor reached out his hand with an frantic amount of energy bursting toward his arm. A giant yellow-colored sword appeared, symbolizing him as an earth attribute cultivator, before he swung it at Jianshen. With a small whistling sound, the heaven's stolen fortune had increased his strength by threefold, giving him enough strength to outrival even a 5th cycle Earth Saint Master, and contend against a 6th cycle Earth Saint Master. With an impressive aura, he flew at the ancestor with no fear at all. The light wind sword danced as the Earth Saint force was scattered apart by Jianshen before reforming straight away. Without any further impediments, Jianshen shot toward the ancestor and stabbed for the ancestor's throat with his sword. Snorting, the Moyan clan's ancestor raised his sleeved hands. In an instant, the energy around him gathered on the ground around him, before condensing into a 2-meter earthen pillar that flew at Jianshen's head. Waving his light wind sword, Jianshen borrowed the power of the sword spirits and shredded apart the pillars like tofu before finally arriving at the ancestor's height. With another flash of silver light, the sword flew at the ancestor's throat once more. So you have some skill after all. The eyes of the ancestor flashed once more as the earth-attributed saint weapon in his hand moved to block the sword. Ding! A crisp sound rang through the air as Jianshen's light wind sword was parried. The sword did not stop there, and with a short burst of strength, it disappeared into hundreds of mirror images that stabbed at the Moyan clan's ancestor. The ancestor grew serious at the speed of Jianshen. This was a speed that even a Heaven Saint Master would have to be cautious around. In a short moment, Jianshen's sword had already reached an inconceivable speed as it struck out dozens of times, forcing his opponent to be unable to retaliate. Soon after, Jianshen's figure had already dropped down from the air and landed back on the ground. The ancestor was growing quite unsightly by now as he looked down at his own saint weapon. On it, there were a few dozen tiny holes on it. His saint weapon to be damaged to such an extent caused him a tidal wave of shock, forcing him into disbelief. To have such strength like that is quite terrifying. The elder thought with some fear toward Jianchen. Right after touching the ground, Jianchen leaped into the air as he tried to fly at the still floating ancestor with his light wind sword. This time, the ancestor did not wait around to block, and took the initiative to gather even more saint force to his saint weapon. With another wave of his sword, a tremendous amount of earth-attributed sword chi shot toward Jianchen as a way of attack. Since he was in midair, Jianchen had nowhere to run, and could only take the sword chi head-on. The sides collided, resulting in a large bang as the shockwave sent Jianchen careening into the ground, with an equally loud boom. Woo woo! The tiger that had been wrapped around Jianchen's chest had been shaken awake with a baleful cry as it began to move its four paws against Jianchen's chest. Opening its eyes slowly to reveal the treasure-like pupils, it began to look at the outside world with a curious expression. In order to protect the tiger wrapped around his chest, Jianchen had smashed into the ground with a miserably pale face. This strike from the Heaven Saint Master had taken a toll on him. Suddenly, a tremendous amount of pressure originating from the floating elder filled the air. The earth-attributed saint weapon had already transformed into pure saint force, and came down on Jianchen ruthlessly. However, this strike from the Heaven Saint Master was one that Jianchen was not willing to accept. Dodging it with his illusionary flash, he swiftly blew past the strike. Bang! The heavens shook as dirt flew everywhere around the trembling earth. Where Jianchen had once been, there was a 5-meter crater that was several meters deep. A black figure appeared to the side. Jianchen had been completely unaffected by the ancestor's show of strength. In an instant, the light wind sword flitted forward and struck out at every single place simultaneously with a speed so fast that the entire area was filled with its mirror images. What a fast sword, the ancestor thought to himself gravely. Jianchen's sword was truly too fast, and with each collision from the swords, the ancestor's own weapon was slowly being riddled with even more holes, that in turn caused damage to him. Although it didn't cause enough damage to him at the time, if the battle went on for any longer, then it would soon turn life-threatening, and could even handicap him. A layer of saint force wrapped around the ancestor's body defensively. Although Jianchen had his sword with the azure and violet sword chi, the saint force would still be able to slow it down. Hurriedly blocking each strike from Jianchen while retreating, the ancestor tried to widen the gap between him and Jianchen. With an explosive shout, the sword in his hand burst into a dazzling show of earth saint force, before immediately filling the entire area and pressing down on Jianchen. This attack caused Jianchen's body to feel incredibly heavy, as if he was carrying a large mountain, making movement difficult. Jianchen, you forced me to use my advanced Earth tier battle skill. You should be proud. The Moyin clan ancestor didn't mince any words, and immediately slashed down toward Jianchen. Another gleam of light appeared in Jianchen's eyes, as he pushed the heaven's stolen fortune to the limit. The previously threefold increase had increased, so that he could now beat most 6th cycle Earth Saint Masters, and smashed his light wind sword into the ancestor's own sword. A blast of energy wreaked havoc in the area, as the surrounding environment was blown apart. The mud on the ground flew into the air, and the valleys themselves began to shake so much that a fissure opened up on the ground. The Heaven Saint Master that was just using an Earth tier battle skill had instantly been heavily damaged by Jianchen. His face immediately grew pale as his body flew backward while a trail of blood left his lips. Whoa whoa! The tiger that was still wrapped around Jianchen's chest began to cry out even more as his entire body felt pain from the shockwave. An intense killing intent entered the ancestor's eyes. The recent attack from Jianchen had caused a flash of fear to enter the ancestor's face. Since he and Jianchen were enemies now, the best method would be to kill him now before he matured any more. This or else there would be danger for the Moyin clan in the future. Chapter 362. inflicting serious damage to the Heaven Saint Master Jian Chun. If you truly desire to annihilate my Moyin clan, then do not blame me for being merciless. For the sake of my clan, I must kill you. The ancestor spoke coldly as the Earth Saint weapon began to billow with even more sword chi than earlier, before he struck out at Jian Chun. Although Jian Chun had already taken heavy damage, his fighting strength was still frightfully terrifying. Immediately shooting up from the ground, he dodged the strike of sword chi. Bang! The ancestor's sword chi strike was almost like an explosive bomb, as it exploded right where Jian Chun was. As the ground exploded and sent dirt flying everywhere, the following grass and mud covered the skies. Within the dust, Jian Chun was like a bullet as he sped toward the ancestor. With his light wind sword emitting sword chi as well, the azure and violet sword chi on the blade was exceptionally eye-catching. The elder from the Moyin clan had a look of contempt. You cling to life like a praying mantis. However, you are only just an Earth Saint Master, and not an opponent against me. Resistance is futile. With that, the elder waved his sword as another wave of sword chi flew from his sword toward Jian Chun. Gritting his teeth without a sound, Jian Chun's eyes grew as sharp as a sword before instantly disappearing away from view with his illusionary flash. As he dodged the sword chi from the ancestor, Jian Chun reappeared by his side and thrust his sword forward. With a cold sneer, the giant sword in the ancestor's hand transformed into a dazzling light of yellow before the energy surged from within, causing the space around the sword to distort. At the same time, another large amount of pressure came toward Jian Chun and pressed down on him, like a heavy stone. The ancestor was using his advanced Earth Tier battle skill once more. With his strength as a Heaven Saint Master, there would be no need to spend any time to prepare for its usage, therefore it could be used almost instantly. Allow me to see just how strong your determination to live is. The ancestor's eyes grew dark as a fierce killing intent flooded them. In an instant, the Earth Attribute Saint weapon flashed for a moment, before flying straight for Jian Chun like a bolt of lightning. At this current moment, there was only a single meter between Jian Chun and the ancestor. Thanks to the severe damage from earlier and the pressure from the ancestor, mobility was quite hard. Every step required an equally large amount of energy, and with the ancestor striking at him, it was impossible for him to try and attack the ancestor. There was a strange smile on Jian Chun's face, before the light wind sword in his hand suddenly flew away from his hand and transformed into a sword that seemed as if it had gained a soul. Against all expectations, the sword had begun to fly through the air before striking for the heart of the Heaven Saint Master. PCH. Suddenly, there was an extreme change across the elder's face from the unavoidable blow. The light wind sword had managed to pierce straight through his heart and explode out from his back with a bloody mess. At the very same time Jian Chun's sword had pierced through the ancestor's heart, the giant sword had managed to stab into Jian Chun's chest as well. The energy within the sword had begun to wreak havoc within his intestines, shaking his inner organs and causing significant damage to his entire body, inner and outer. Spitting out a large mist of blood, Jian Chun's face grew unimaginably white. Meanwhile, the blood on his chest had already started to drip down onto the pure white fur of the tiger cub and stain it red. The sword spirits within Jian Chun's dantian shook before beginning to emit an attractive force. Straight away, the energy that had been causing Jian Chun's body to take damage were immediately sucked in by sword spirits, preventing them from causing any more harm. The ancestor had received an incredibly serious wound now that his heart had been obliterated. There was also some chi left within his body from when the light wind sword had ran straight through him. Although he was a Heaven Saint Master, his inner organs were weaker than Jian Chun's. In contrast, the energy he had left behind in Jian Chun's body was far stronger than the energy that Jian Chun had left within his. However, this was still the very first time he had sustained such a heavy injury that he could not take. Spitting out a large amount of blood, he looked at Jian Chun with a dark glare. It is no wonder you are the king of mercenaries of the last gathering of the mercenaries. To have such strength, I've underestimated you if you could force me to such a disastrous state. Even when you die, you should be proud of this fact. With that, The ancestor clenched tightly to the sword that was still in Jian Chen's chest. Just as he planned to cut Jian Chen in two, an ear-splitting sound could be heard from behind him, filling his face with shock. PCH. The throat of the ancestor was split apart as blood came rushing out of the new wound. The light wind sword had finally made its way back after piercing the elder's heart. Since the elder was not prepared to defend against such an attack, it had worked. A look of horror flitted across his face as he gave up on his attempt to kill Jian Chen. Then, flying at full speed, he tried to run away from Jian Chen while reclaiming his sword. Whoosh! A loud ear-piercing sound could be heard once more as the light wind sword seemingly stopped its backward momentum and flew at the Heaven Saint Master with a renewed speed. The light wind sword slashed across the elder's leg, and with a torrent of rain, the severed limbs of his legs could be seen falling down from the sky. The ancestor let out a pain-filled cry as he flew 500 meters into the air, so that he was nothing more than a speck of dust. As he flew away, he could only look at his severed legs on the ground in abject horror and disbelief. Jian Chen was staring at the ancestor's tiny dot in the sky with a surprising amount of shock. A Heaven Saint Master's vitality was indeed extremely strong if his light wind sword was able to pierce through both his heart and throat without him dying. This revelation of information was stunning. Not only were Heaven Saint Masters strong, but their tenacity was terrifying. It was unfortunate that the soul sword could only travel 200 meters away from Jian Chen. With the Moyin clan ancestor being 500 meters away, there was no way for his sword to travel that far. This was because after 200 meters, his control over the light wind sword would shrink, and once it reached the 300-meter mark, he would lose all control over it. The light wind sword returned to Jian Chen's hand as a ball of silver light. Despite his pale face and his serious wounds, Jian Chen did not want the elder to escape that easily. An azure and violet light escaped from his light wind sword before shooting out from Jian Chen's mental command. Floating high in the air, the ancestor could only look down on Jian Chen with a fearful expression. He knew that his current state was dreadful with there being a hole where his heart used to be. This alone was already nearly crippling, but then he now had another hole where his throat was. His body was badly mangled, but in the face of everything, he had not died yet. Seeing the azure and violet glows of light shoot for him, the ancestor could only hastily throw his body out of the way and try to dodge the blows. Then, casting a poisonous glare at Jian Chen, he flew off. Right now he had 2 major injuries on high body. Although they would not kill him, they still required a hasty healing. If he remained here, he would fall prey to another one of Jian Chen's strange tricks and end up dead. Running away from Jian Chen would leave Jian Chen no options other than to look at him get farther and farther away. Now that the ancestor was gone, Jian Chen could let out a sigh in relief. After today's battle, he could be sure that his strength was similar to that of a Heaven Saint Master. If he had not the soul sword to make any unbreakable guard breakable, then he would have found it impossible to beat a Heaven Saint Master. This type of expert wouldn't be as paranoid about the azure and violet sword chi, since they weren't like Earth Saint Masters. It was only when their saint weapons were to be damaged by it that they would worry. It seems that I must find a way to allow the sword spirits to heal as fast as I can. If I could only heal them enough, then my azure and violet sword chi would surely grow stronger. Jian Chen spoke as he tried to sit up painfully. Right now, the azure and violet sword chi weren't a major problem to any Heaven Saint Master, so he would need to find a way to heal the sword spirit's strengths. This way, not only would the sword spirits be stronger, but the amount of assistance he could receive would be higher too. The tiger cub that was wrapped around Jian Chen still could smell the dripping blood from Jian Chen, and seemed to look as if it was hungry. Resting for a moment, Jian Chen placed the cub down on the ground for a moment before sitting down, and using the Radiant Saint Force to heal his wounds. Whoa whoa! Just as the tiger cub left his spot on Jian Chen's chest, he grew unhappy immediately. Starting to cry, his 4 paws began to scratch the ground before ultimately climbing up Jian Chen's body with Herculean strength, and lapped up his blood hungrily. Seeing the behavior of the tiger cub, Jian Chen didn't know whether to laugh or cry before feeling a sharp pain in his chest. Taking off his blood-soaked clothes, Jian set the tiger on the ground lightly next to it to do as it pleased. This way, the white tiger cub wouldn't bother Jian and could lick and gnaw at his bloody clothes with vigor, as if it enjoyed the taste and smell of it. Chapter 363. Inescapable Net. 1. After the battle, Jian continued to use the Radiant Saint Force to heal himself. However, since he had used a lot of his spirit to try and seal away the dark energy within Rum Guinness, he did not have enough power to completely recover from his own wounds in one go. After healing himself to a half-state, Jian stopped the process and took the tiger cub in order to look for a cave to hide in and resume the process of healing himself. While the ancestor of the Moyan clan had escaped with grave injuries, he still knew where Jian was. Jian didn't know when the elder would be back with reinforcements, so he had to quickly heal. As long as he had enough strength, he would be able to escape. If he didn't, then he wouldn't be able to run far. In the case that another Heaven Saint Master were to give chase, he would not be able to cope. Jian spent the rest of the day trying to regain all of his strength before attempting to use the Radiant Saint Force to heal himself once more. Now that Jian had more spirit than before, his ability to control the Radiant Saint Force was even better now. Despite the severity of his injuries, it only took him another hour to completely heal himself. After his wounds were fully healed, Jian didn't stop to rest. Immediately taking out a Class 5 monster core, he began to recover the rest of his Saint Force. After using the Heaven's Stolen Fortune to multiply his strength by threefold, the amount of Saint Force that he had used had been hefty. Right now his Saint Force was still not in tip-top shape, and was slowly recovering from his exhausted state. Recovering the Saint Force was a slow process. It was only 10 hours later that Jian's Saint Force had been fully recovered. Slowly standing up from the ground, Jian changed into a new set of clothes from his space ring, before taking the still sleeping white tiger out of the cave. It was well past the midnight hours, and the poisonous fog around the valley was even more noticeable than before. Yet it was also weaker in potency as well. This type of poison would pose no problem to an Earth Saint Master at all. Just past the foliage of the trees, Jian could clearly see the blanket of stars and the bright white moon hanging overhead, shining down on the lands. Jian was still carrying the sleeping white tiger as he looked around the area. After confirming that it was safe, he left from the area under the guise of the dark night. Jian quickly flew through the forest at a rapid pace. He had already discovered that there were torches lit from every direction, meaning the other factions had already blockaded the entire area, and must have hired countless of men to comb through the forest to look for the white tiger cub. Knowing that the Thousand Poison Valley was no longer safe, Jian could no longer stay here. Using the cover of night to leave the valley, he began to travel through the forest with the illusionary flash. For hours later, Jian had traveled a far distance away, where the outskirts of a city could be seen to Jian. Immediately dashing for the city, Jian arrived at the wall of the city before silently and sneakily climbing over it and into the city. Because it was night time, the city was extraordinarily quiet with not a single inn open. Even the streets were cold and desolate without a single person. Holding the tiger cub close to him, as if he was smuggling something, Jian quickly walked by a quiet-looking inn. Jumping up to the third floor, he quietly slipped inside through the window without being detected. Within the inn, Jian set the tiger cub on the bed, and then took out another monster core to restore his Saint Force. On the second morning, Jian had changed his appearances to become a 30-year-old youth, once more before hiding the tiger cub beneath his clothes and leaving the tavern. One of the waitresses to the inn stared at Jian's back with a suspicious stare. If my memory isn't wrong, I could have sworn that I didn't see him yesterday. Could he have snuck in when I wasn't looking? After leaving, Jian took himself on a stroll around the city before entering a food store. Shop owner, do you have any fresh magical beast milk for sale? This shop owner was a 40-year-old skinny but scholarly man. When he heard Jian, he turned around without batting an eye at the bulge of Jian's stomach. Yes, naturally I have some for sale. Whichever type of magical beast milk the honored customer wants, our store will have it. Then let's have a look at your tiger milk. Make them all as fresh and as many as possible. Money is not a problem. Jianchen spoke without a question. All right, honored customer, please wait one moment. I will be back with your items. With that, the shop owner walked to the back of the store to fetch the items. Patiently, Jianchen stood at the front of the store. The tiger cub hadn't eaten for 2 days. And while Jianchen didn't know how often the tiger cub needed to eat, it would be for the best if he had some tiger milk on hand. Soon enough, the time it took to burn a candlewick had gone by without the shop owner reappearing, or any sound coming from the back at all. By now, even Jianchen had an impatient look on his face. But for the sake of the tiger cub's meal, he could only continue to wait. Afterward, another brief moment had gone by, without the shop owner ever returning. A sense of paranoia struck Jianchen as he decided that staying here any longer would be unwise, and turned to walk out. Just at that moment, a squad of armored guards suddenly walked through the doors toward Jianchen. Crap, Jianchen thought, knowing what this matter was coming to. Then the commander of the squadron walked up to Jianchen with a cold glare. Who are you? Speak your name. Without hesitation, Jianchen responded. I am Chen. What might the militia want with me? The commander of the soldiers looked at the bulge on Jianchen's stomach for a moment before speaking. What are you hiding in there? Show it to us. Jianchen's face grew dark. The items in my possession have nothing to do with you. There has been a spike in criminal acts in the city recently. You must be hiding stolen goods. The commander spat out the words, as if he thought Jianchen was a fiend. Hearing that, Jianchen gently lifted away the robes to reveal the head of the tiger cub who was still sleeping soundly. Is this an item that appeared to be stolen? The soldier's eyes immediately shined as he spotted the tiger cub. Quick! Capture the cub and report it to the city lord straight away. The surrounding soldiers charged at Jianchen with their saint weapons ready to strike. Snorting, Jianchen's hand flashed through the air and shot a strong gust of wind that pierced into their chests before sweeping his other hand across the counter. In a single movement, he had already collected all of the nearby milk bottles into his space ring before leaving the shop. Most of the soldiers were great saints while the commander himself was only a saint master. Just how could they stop him? Bursting out of the store, Jianchen immediately held tight to the tiger cub as he ran for the city gates. Leaping across from roof to roof with an impeccable speed, everyone on the ground could only look at him in shock as they talked to each other. Quick, send a report to the city lord's mansion. We've found the target. The commander, who had his chest pierced by the gust of wind, cried out loud as he clutched at the part of the chest. In a flash, an ear-splitting sound could be heard as a ball of fireworks flew off into the air before exploding loudly. Not too long after, a figure could be seen flying through the air in the direction of where the firework had exploded. Look, that person's flying. Heavens, who would have known there would be a heaven saint master within our Lanfeng city? At the front of the city, a soldier guard cried out in a large voice. Hurry up and close the gates. Everyone forward. Anyone that disobeys will be killed without mercy. Archers, prepare your arrows and await the signal. Hurry up and get ready. Immediately, the soldiers all began to busy themselves with their own respective tasks as the gate began to close. At the same time, each person were shouting out commands to each other. Continuing to fly along the road, he quickly came to the city gates, which were already closed and had blocked many people from entering or leaving. With a single leap, Jianchen had already began to scale the wall in an attempt to cross it. Fire! The soldier commander had barked out. Suddenly, the already notched bows of the archers were released, causing a myriad of arrows to fly at Jianchen, while the crossbow wielders launched the heavy bolts at him as well. With a sneer, Jianchen let a bubble of saint force out from his entire body, before spreading out 20 meters away from him, with a thickness of 2 inches, so the arrows wouldn't pierce it. Fire, fire, fire! Don't let him get away! The commander cried out. The soldiers continued to hustle around as they resupplied for the second barrage. Jianchen's speed was far beyond what they had anticipated, and so by the time the archers had notched their arrows again, Jianchen had already started to run further up the city walls. With each step he made, he accelerated in speed before he finally cleared the wall and escaped the city. "Commander, he escaped. What should we do now? Give chase." "Commander, should we bring people to chase after him?" The other soldiers could only cry out for the commander and wait for a response, but no response came. "Commander, what should we do?" a captain had asked once more. Suddenly, a line of blood could be seen on the commander's neck. Then, right in the middle of everyone, the head of their commander fell to the ground. Chapter 364. Inescapable Net 2. Outside the city walls was a flat prairie land that Jianchen continued to fly across at a breakneck speed. With each step, he traversed at least 20 meters. Even though he was not using the illusionary flash, he was still traveling quite fast. Now that this situation had occurred, Jianchen knew that every single surrounding city was no longer safe. Every single power had already put out an order for him to be arrested in the case they discovered Jianchen. Because the tiger was far too conspicuous, and because Jianchen had promised Rum Guinness that he would take care of the cub would have to stay with him. Right now, the tiger cub was far too weak to protect itself. If it were to try and live by itself, then there was a good chance a mercenary group or another magical beast would get to it. While Jianchen was running, he suddenly felt something coming from behind. Turning his head behind, an unsightly look graced his face as he saw a figure flying through the air a few hundred meters behind. Jianchen's heart grew a little heavy at this sight. After fighting the ancestor of the Moyan clan in the valley, he knew just how strong a Heaven Saint Master was. Even if he gave it his all, the two sides would end up being heavily injured. There was just too much of a difference between an Earth Saint Master and a Heaven Saint Master. Even after using the Heaven's stolen fortune to multiply his strength threefold, he was only barely able to fight a Heaven Saint Master. Jianchen wouldn't be able to do anything either if the Heaven Saint Master fled, since they could fly through the air, while Jianchen could not. Looking at the flying Heaven Saint Master darkly, Jianchen immediately used the illusionary flash in order to explode across the plains and travel 10 times faster than before. Jianchen's sudden burst of speed caused the distance between him and the Heaven Saint Master to increase by a large amount. However, the Heaven Saint Master began to increase his speed as well, following close behind Jianchen and trying to close the distance. The illusionary flash was a heaven-tier battle skill that Jianchen had only a small grasp of. Despite it increasing his speed many times over, it would not be enough to outrace the Heaven Saint Master. After all, Jianchen was running on the ground, but the other was flying through the air. "Jianchen, you cannot escape. Why not hand over the seal of Treasure Mountain back to the Sure family and save your energy?" At this moment, the voice of the Heaven Saint Master could be heard like a sound of thunder that rang through the world. Hearing this familiar sound, Jianchen turned back once more only to discover that the Heaven Saint Master flying through the air was the person he had talked to back in Mercenary City. It was one of the 4 Kai brothers. Jianchen continued to silently try and run away, while he had the strength to fight against a Heaven Saint Master. He did not wish to fight just yet. Even if he were to beat back the Heaven Saint Master, he would have to pay a heavy price for it. With this heavy price, then if any reinforcements came, there would be no strength left in Jianchen to fight back. "Jianchen, just return the seal of Treasure Mountain, you cannot escape. You most likely don't know this, but the Sure family and Jetta clan have joined forces. Aside from us 4 Kai brothers, there are another 4 other Heaven Saint Masters watching out for you at the same time. Knowing that you came out of the Thousand Poison Valley, us 8 men were able to go to the surrounding cities nearby and wait for you. I've already notified the other 7 of our location, you cannot escape." The Heaven Saint Master spoke. Hearing this, Jianchen's face grew extremely dark. He hadn't thought that 8 Heaven Saint Masters would be chasing him. Facing against just one of them was hard enough, let alone 8. With 8, there would be no chance for him to fight back at all. Jianchen's speed continued to increase as he took out a map. The surrounding area was quickly memorized by Jianchen before he flew off into a random direction without hesitation. Utilizing the heaven's stolen fortune to increase his speed by triple the amount, he tried to outrace the Heaven Saint Master, once more using the illusionary flash. All that was left in Jianchen's original spot was a tremendous dust storm. The sudden burst in speed from Jianchen had caused the elder from the four Kai brothers to be stunned. Looking at the now gone figure of Jianchen, he could only stutter out a phrase in amazement. "I'm impossible. Just how could he travel so fast?" In the next moment, the elder had no other choice but to chase after Jianchen, while trying to ensure that Jianchen did not get too far away. With a newfound determination, the elder suddenly flew higher up into the air and began to follow the trail of dust left behind Jianchen's extreme speed. Jianchen had never traveled at such a speed before. Right now, even the scenery was completely indistinguishable to him, since it was going past him at such a blur. The illusionary flash and heaven's stolen fortune combined had allowed Jianchen to exceed what a Heaven Saint Master could do. However, this would result in an extreme amount of Saint Force being consumed. Being a fourth cycle Earth Saint Master, he would only be able to keep this up for 2 hours. After that he would be completely out of Saint Force. Already feeling his Saint Force reserves depleting, Jianchen quickly took out a Class 5 monster core from his space ring and began to recover some of the Saint Force while he ran. 2 hours later, Jianchen had already traveled for well over 2,000 kilometers. On the road, he had gone by many cities, but Jianchen hadn't dared enter any single one of them. Now that his Saint Force reserves were empty, Jianchen took the tiger cub to a giant mountain. The mountain was rather barren, but the peak couldn't be seen thanks to the clouds. Carrying the tiger cub, Jianchen arrived at a stone forest where Jianchen immediately set about carving a hole in the limestone for him to hide in for now. Aside from the outside markings, there was another giant stone that blocked the entrance, so that the cave inside would be hidden. After all of the preparations were made, Jianchen stumbled into the cave weakly. Taking out a night pearl to illuminate the cave, he looked around the newly constructed cave. Whoa, whoa! At this moment, the tiger cub began to wail as it started to gnaw on Jianchen's arm, while pressing its paws against his chest. Occasionally, sounds could be heard coming from its stomach, symbolizing that it was hungry. By now, even Jianchen knew that the tiger cub was hungry, hurriedly taking out a milk bottle to feed the cub. He knew that it had been at least 2 days since the cub had eaten. If it had been a human infant, it would have long since cried out in hunger. It was only after it had finished off 10 kilograms of milk bottles that the cub had been satisfied. The watching Jianchen had been astonished. The tiger cub was only so big, but it had managed to drink a surprising amount of magical beast milk. Jianchen had a total of 50 kilograms worth of milk, but the tiger had already consumed nearly a fifth of it. If the cub's appetite continued on like this, then he would only be able to feed the cub like this another 4 times. It seems that I need to collect even more magical beast milk, but I don't even know where and what other resources to gather, so that the tiger cub will grow. Just what is this resource that is needed anyways? Jianchen threw the empty bottles with a reflective pondering. The tiger cub lay on the ground with its eyes closed in satisfaction. Curling up in a cute manner, the tiger cub's wings were still furrowed close to its body in a way that made them hard to see. Afterward, Jianchen took out another monster core to heal his Saint Force. Using both the illusionary flash and the heaven stolen fortune for such an extended period of time had left Jianchen empty. 10 hours later, Jianchen finally stood back up. With the power of the azure and violet sword spirits, his absorption rate was far faster than before. In a short 10 hours, his Saint Force had already came back to the maximum amount. Walking to the side of the cave, Jianchen peeked out from a small crack of the entrance. It was still early with the sun already starting to rise from the west. Jianchen didn't leave just yet, however. Vanishing his presence, he slowly moved the stone to enlarge the hole to see what was happening outside. An hour later, a single person flew past Jianchen's line of sight, before quickly disappearing as fast as it had appeared. In another moment, A fire-red-colored figure blew past Jian Chen's line of sight as well. Jian Chen waited for another 4 hours, before seeing a total of 5 men fly through the sky. Not too long after, they all disappeared as well. The sky outside slowly turned to night as the sun began to set. Once more, Jian Chen returned to the inner depths of the cave, and began to ponder his next step. Based off what he had seen earlier, he had known that the two Jetta clan and Sher family were already watching the entire area. Although they hadn't found his hiding spot thanks to the hidden, well-concealed entrance, it was only a matter of time before this secret area would be discovered. So this meant he couldn't stay here for long. Furthermore, Jian Chen was worried that the Jetta clan and the Sher family would hire even more Heaven Saint masters. After all, they wanted the ruler armament in his possession. It would make sense if even their ancestors were to come by themselves personally for the sake of retrieving it. You're tuning in to the Li Mei's Wuxia Whispers YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support. And don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.